The gun trembled in the elevator, its barrel swinging between a crying infant and her teenage mother. Noah Reed had seconds to decide, protect his diabetic son behind him or shield the strangers in front. "Point it at me," he said, stepping forward as sirens wailed through Mercy General Hospital. The choice he made in that cramped metal box would end his life, but begin a legacy that transformed 3 broken souls into an unbreakable family. This is their story. Comment your city below to see how far this journey reaches. The fluorescent lights of Mercy General Hospital's emergency room hummed with their familiar anxious rhythm as veteran nurse Diane Matthews checked her watch for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. 23 years working these halls had given her an almost supernatural ability to sense when trouble was brewing, and tonight that familiar knot was forming in her stomach. It wasn't the usual Saturday night chaos, the bar fights, the overdoses, the car accidents that painted weekend shifts in shades of crisis. No, this was something different, something that made her unconsciously check the emergency exits and count the security guards on duty. "Everything all right, Di?" Dr. Marcus Alvarez asked, noticing her unease as he reviewed charts at the nurses' station. At 38, Alvarez had been running the ER for 5 years, and he'd learned to trust Diane's instincts implicitly. "Just one of those nights, Doc," she replied, her eyes scanning the waiting room through the reinforced glass windows. "Feels like the air before a thunderstorm." Neither of them could have predicted that the storm would arrive in the form of a desperate father carrying his unconscious 4-year-old son through the automatic doors at 11:47 p.m. Noah Reed burst through the entrance like a man possessed, his work boots pounding against the linoleum as he cradled Caleb's limp form against his chest. His flannel shirt was soaked with sweat, despite the November chill, and his eyes, those tired, haunted eyes that had seen too much in 32 years, were wild with a parent's primal fear. "Help him. Please, somebody. Help my son." Noah's voice cracked raw and desperate, cutting through the controlled chaos of the emergency room like a blade. Diane was already moving her training, overriding the chill that ran down her spine. "Trauma Bay 3. She called out, guiding Noah through the maze of curtained areas. "What happened? How long has he been unconscious?" "He's diabetic type 1. Noah gasped, his words tumbling over each other as he laid Caleb on the gurney. "I gave him his insulin at dinner. I swear I did. But he didn't eat much," said his stomach hurt. "I thought he was just being picky. Then I found him on the bathroom floor, and he wouldn't wake up, and I—" "Blood glucose check stat," Dr. Alvarez commanded as he swept into the bay, his hands already reaching for Caleb's wrist to check his pulse. The small boy looked even smaller on the adult-sized bed, his sandy brown hair the same shade as his father's, plastered to his forehead with perspiration. The glucometer beeped 28 millimol gauge DL, dangerously low. "Severe hypoglycemia." Alvarez confirmed, his voice steady and reassuring despite the urgency. "Diane, get me D50 Ivor push. Noah, you did the right thing bringing him in. We're going to take care of him." As the medical team worked with practiced efficiency, Noah stood frozen at the foot of the bed, his large calloused hands that had built houses, fixed cars, held his dying wife 2 years ago, now trembling uselessly at his sides. He watched them insert the IV into Caleb's tiny arm, watched the clear glucose solution flow into his son's veins, watched and prayed to a God he wasn't sure he still believed in. "Daddy." The word was barely a whisper, but it might as well have been a shout for how quickly Noah moved to Caleb's side. "I'm here, buddy. I'm right here." Noah's voice broke as he smoothed his son's hair back, the relief so overwhelming it nearly brought him to his knees. "You scared me, Cal. You scared Daddy real bad." Caleb's brown eyes, still glassy but focusing now, found his father's face. "My tummy still hurts." "I know, baby. The doctors are going to make it better. You're going to be okay." Noah looked up at Dr. Alvarez, seeking confirmation of his promise. "His blood sugar's rising nicely," Alvarez assured him, checking the monitor. "We'll keep him for observation overnight, run some tests to make sure his insulin regimen is properly calibrated. Kids' needs change as they grow. When did he last see his endocrinologist?" Noah's jaw tightened, shame coloring his weathered features. 6 months ago. I've been meaning to reschedule, but with work and everything. He trailed off, the weight of single parenthood hanging unspoken in the air. Diane touched his shoulder gently. No judgment here, On. You're doing your best. That's all any of us can do. As the immediate crisis passed and Caleb's color returned to normal, the ER settled back into its usual rhythm. Noah pulled an uncomfortable plastic chair close to the bed, prepared for another long night in a hospital, a place that had become far too familiar since Sarah's death. He watched Caleb drift off to sleep, the steady beep of the monitors, a reassuring soundtrack to his vigil. It was nearly 2 a.m. when he heard its soft, muffled sobbing from the next bay over, separated only by a thin curtain. At first he tried to ignore it, respecting the invisible boundaries of hospital privacy. But the crying continued, punctuated by harsh, angry voices that made his protective instincts flare. You're 17 years old, Ava? 17. You can't possibly think you're capable of raising a baby. The woman's voice was sharp, cultured, dripping with disgust and disappointment. Your mother's right, a man added, his tone dismissive and cold. We've arranged everything with the adoption agency. They have a nice couple, waiting doctors, both of them. The baby will have opportunities you could never provide. She's my daughter, the girl's voice. Ava's voice was young but fierce, raw with postpartum emotion and exhaustion. I don't care what you've arranged. I'm not giving her up. You'll care when you're trying to finish high school with a screaming infant. You'll care when you can't go to college because you're too busy changing diapers. You'll care when you end up just like every other teenage mother on welfare, no future, no hope. Noah's hands clenched into fists. He knew he should mind his own business, knew he had enough problems without taking on someone else's, but something about the girl's desperate sobs pulled at him. Maybe it was the memory of Sarah, fierce and protective, when she'd held Caleb for the first time. Maybe it was the bone-deep exhaustion that made him too tired to remember why getting involved was a bad idea. Or maybe it was just that loneliness recognizes loneliness even through a hospital curtain. He stood up, checked that Caleb was sleeping soundly, and quietly stepped around the divider. The scene that greeted him was almost exactly what he'd imagined. A teenage girl, Ava, sat propped up in the hospital bed, her dark hair tangled and her face swollen from crying. She held a tiny bundle wrapped in the standard-issue pink hospital blanket, clutching the baby like someone might snatch her away at any moment. Which Noah realized someone might. Standing over her were two adults who could only be her parents. The woman was impeccably dressed even at 2 a.m., her blonde hair perfectly styled, her designer handbag worth more than Noah made in a month. The man beside her wore a suit that probably cost more than Noah's truck, his expression one of barely controlled fury. All three turned to look at him, and Noah suddenly felt very aware of his worn jeans, his faded flannel, his work boots that had seen better days. "Can we help you?" the man asked, his tone suggesting that help was the last thing he intended to offer. "Sorry to interrupt," Noah said, his voice steady despite the anxiety crawling up his spine. "I couldn't help but overhear. Sounds like you folks are having a tough night." "This is a private family matter," the woman said icily. "I'd appreciate if you'd—" "I'm a father," Noah interrupted, surprising himself with his boldness. "Lost my wife 2 years ago. Been raising my son alone ever since. He's in the next bed over diabetic crisis. Almost lost him tonight." Ava looked at him with eyes that seemed far too old for 17 eyes that had seen their own share of loss and disappointment. "The thing is," Noah continued addressing Ava directly, now ignoring her parents' indignant expressions, "being a parent is the hardest thing you'll ever do. It'll test you in ways you can't imagine. You'll make mistakes, God knows I make them every day. You'll be tired, scared, overwhelmed. Some days you'll wonder if you're ruining your kid's life just by being their parent." Ava's mother made a satisfied sound as if Noah was proving her point. "But," Noah said, his voice growing stronger, "it's also the most important thing you'll ever do. That little girl in your arms. She doesn't care if you're 17, 37. She doesn't care if you have a college degree or a fancy house. All she cares about is that you're her mama. And if you want to be her mama, if you're willing to fight for her, to sacrifice for her, to love her even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, then nobody, and I mean nobody, has the right to tell you different." The room fell silent except for the soft whimper of the baby Grace Noah would later learn her name was.
Ava's tears had stopped, and she was looking at him with something like hope dawning in her eyes. "You have no idea what you're talking about," her father said, his voice low and dangerous. "You have no idea who we are, what we can provide for this baby, what kind of life—" "I know what it's like to lose family," Noah said quietly, meeting the man's glare without flinching. "And I know that money can't buy what really matters."
Love isn't about what you can provide, it's about showing up every day even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Mama! Caleb's sleepy voice drifted over from the next bay, and Noah's attention immediately shifted. "I'll be right there, buddy," he called back, then looked at Ava one more time. "Whatever you decide, make sure it's your decision. Nobody else has to live with it but you." He turned to go back to his son, but Ava's voice stopped him. "Wait," she said, her voice small but determined. "What's your name, Noah? Noah Reed." "I'm Ava, Ava Monroe, and this—" She looked down at the bundle in her arms with a fierce protective love that Noah recognized all too well. "This is Grace." "Beautiful name," Noah said, offering her a small smile. "You're going to be a great mom, Ava. Trust your instincts." He returned to Caleb's bedside, aware of the heated discussion continuing next door, but trying not to listen. Caleb reached for his hand and Noah took it, marveling as always at how small and perfect his son's fingers were. "Where's Mama?" Caleb asked, still groggy from his ordeal. The question hit Noah like it always did, a sucker punch to the gut that never got easier no matter how many times he heard it. "Mama's in heaven, remember? But she's watching over you, always." Caleb nodded solemnly, accepting this explanation as he had 100 times before. "The baby was crying," he observed. "Yeah, babies do that sometimes." "We should help," Caleb said with the simple certainty that only a 4-year-old could muster. "Mama would help." Noah's throat tightened. "Sarah would help." Sarah always helped, whether it was bringing soup to sick neighbors or volunteering at the shelter or taking in stray cats even though Noah was allergic. She'd had a heart too big for her body, and maybe that's why it had given out so young. "Yeah, buddy, Mama would help." The next few hours passed in a blur of blood tests, insulin adjustments, and consultations with the on-call endocrinologist. Noah dozed fitfully in the chair, waking every time Caleb stirred or a nurse came to check his vitals. Around 5 a.m., he heard footsteps storm past their curtained area and caught a glimpse of Ava's parents leaving, their faces set in masks of fury and disappointment. The crying started again shortly after, but this time it was different. Not desperate, but defeated, the sound of someone who had won a battle but wasn't sure they could survive the war. Noah looked at Caleb, who was sleeping peacefully, his blood sugar stable, his color good. The nurse had just been by and said they were looking at a discharge around noon if everything stayed stable. He could sit here for the next 7 hours, or he called softly to Diane, who was passing by with an armload of supplies. "Can you keep an eye on Caleb for a few minutes? I need to—" He gestured toward Ava's bay. Diane gave him a knowing look. She'd probably heard the whole confrontation. "Go ahead, hon. I'll watch your boy." Noah found Ava trying to change Grace's diaper with shaking hands, tears streaming down her face as she fumbled with the adhesive tabs. The baby was crying that high, thin wail that all new parents learn to dread, and Ava looked like she might start wailing herself. "Need a hand?" Noah asked gently. Ava looked up, startled, then nodded, her pride crumbling under the weight of exhaustion and fear. "I don't know what I'm doing. They're right, I can't even change a diaper properly. How am I supposed to—" Hey, oh, Noah said, moving to her side. "First rule of parenting, nobody knows what they're doing. We're all just figuring it out as we go. Here, let me show you a trick." He guided her hands, showing her how to lift Grace's legs gently, how to clean thoroughly, but carefully, how to position the new diaper so it wouldn't leak. It was muscle memory for him now, but he remembered those first terrifying weeks with Caleb when every diaper change felt like defusing a bomb. "There," he said, as Grace, now clean and dry, settled into a contented silence. "See, you did that." "My parents left," Ava said quietly, staring down at her daughter. "They said if I keep her, I'm on my own. No college fund, no trust fund, no home. They won't even let me get my things. I have literally nothing except the clothes I'm wearing and whatever the hospital gives me for her."
Noah's jaw tightened. He'd grown up poor, but he'd always had family. He couldn't imagine being 17, having just given birth, and being completely abandoned by the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally. "Where's Grace's father?" he asked carefully. Ava's laugh was bitter. "Derek, he's at Syracuse playing lacrosse. His parents paid my parents to handle the situation. He blocked my number the day I told him I was pregnant."
So much for love, right? Noah was quiet for a moment, thinking. It was insane what he was considering. Completely, utterly insane. He had a sick kid, a demanding job, a 2-bedroom apartment that was barely big enough for him and Caleb. He was drowning in medical bills, barely keeping his head above water. The last thing he needed was to get involved in this girl's problems. But he heard Sarah's voice in his head clear as day. "Sometimes the right thing and the easy thing aren't the same thing, Noah. That's when you find out who you really are." "Look," he said slowly, hardly believing the words coming out of his mouth. "I have a couch. It's not much. My apartment's pretty small, and it's not in the best neighborhood. But it's safe, and it's warm, and you and Grace would be welcome until you figure things out." Ava stared at him like he'd started speaking in tongues. "You don't even know me. I could be a drug addict, or a thief, or... Are you? No, but... Then we're good." Noah pulled out his phone, showing her the lock screen, a picture of him, Sarah, and baby Caleb at the beach, all 3 of them laughing at something off camera. "This was my wife, Sarah. She died of a heart condition 2 years ago. Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, basically. Her heart was too big, literally and figuratively. She was always taking in strays, people, animals, lost causes. Used to drive me crazy." He smiled at the memory, though it hurt like pressing on a bruise. "After she died, I shut down. Focused on just surviving, getting through each day, keeping Caleb healthy and safe. But tonight, hearing you fight for your daughter, seeing you stand up to your parents, even though you had everything to lose, Sarah would have liked you. She would have helped you. And maybe that's why I'm here tonight. Maybe this is her way of telling me it's time to stop just surviving." Ava was crying again, but these tears were different. "Why would you do this for strangers?" "Because someone should have," Noah said simply. "Because you're 17 and alone, and you just had a baby, and that's not right. Because my son could have died tonight, but he didn't, and maybe that means something. Because loneliness is a kind of pain I wouldn't wish on anyone, and I see it in your eyes like a mirror. I don't have any money. I can't pay rent, or... We'll figure it out," Noah interrupted. "Can you cook?" "Yes, actually. My grandmother taught me before she died." "Then you can help with meals. Maybe watch Caleb sometimes when I have to work late. We'll make it work." He paused, then added, "But this isn't charity, and it's not permanent. This is just until you get on your feet. You'll need to get your GED, find a job, figure out childcare. It won't be easy." "Nothing about this is easy," Ava said, looking down at Grace, who had fallen asleep in her arms. "But she's worth it. She has to be worth it." "She is," Noah assured her. "They always are." Dr. Alvarez appeared in the doorway, looking between them with raised eyebrows. "Mr. Reed Caleb's asking for you, and Ms. Monroe, the social worker, is here to discuss your discharge planning." The social worker turned out to be a kind, tired-looking woman named Patricia, who had clearly seen too many teenage mothers abandoned by their families. She listened to Ava's situation with professional detachment, then raised both eyebrows when Noah explained his offer. "Mr. Reed, while your generosity is admirable, I have to ask, are you sure you've thought this through? Taking in a minor and her infant is a significant responsibility." "She's 17, Noah pointed out. "In New York, she can leave home at 17. She's not a runaway if her parents kicked her out." "That's technically true, but I aged out of foster care," Noah said quietly, and Ava looked at him in surprise. "I know what it's like to have nobody. I had to figure everything out on my own, how to get an apartment, how to open a bank account, how to be an adult when you're still just a kid. I won't let someone else go through that if I can help." Patricia studied him for a long moment, then turned to Ava. "Is this what you want? To go with Mr. Reed?" Ava looked at Noah, then at Grace, then back at Noah. "It's better than a shelter, right?" "Significantly better," Patricia admitted. "But I'll need to do a home visit, and there will be follow-ups. Mr. Reed, I'll need to run a background check." "Do whatever you need to do," Noah said. "I've got nothing to hide." The next few hours were a whirlwind of paperwork, phone calls, and preparations. Noah called his foreman to say he wouldn't be in for his shift the first time he'd missed work in 2 years. Diane helped gather supplies from the hospital's donation closet, diapers, formula, a few tiny onesies that had seen better days but were clean and soft. Caleb, once he understood that the girl and the baby were coming home with them, was thrilled. "Like a sleepover," he announced, bouncing on his hospital bed despite Noah's attempts to keep him calm. "Kind of buddy, but longer." "How long? I don't know yet. Is that okay?" Caleb considered this seriously, then nodded. "The baby is small. She needs help. We're helpers, right, Daddy?" "Like Mama was." Noah's chest tightened. "Yeah, Cal. We're helpers." By noon, they were ready to leave. Noah pulled his beat-up Ford F-150 around to the patient discharge area, realizing belatedly that he didn't have a car seat for Grace. Diane came through again, producing one from the hospital's loan program. "You bring it back when you get your own," she said, helping to install it properly. "And Noah, what you're doing? It's good, really good." "It's probably stupid," Noah admitted, double-checking the straps. "The best things usually are," Diane replied with a knowing smile. The drive to Noah's apartment was quiet, except for Caleb's chatter about showing Grace his toys and teaching her colors, apparently not understanding that newborns couldn't play with blocks or learn the alphabet yet. Ava sat in the back with Grace, looking out the window as they left the nice part of town and entered Noah's neighborhood working class, a little rough around the edges, but home. The apartment building was a tired-looking brick structure, 5 stories of fading respectability. The elevator had been broken for 3 months, and the stairwell smelled faintly of cabbage and stronger things Noah tried not to think about. He carried Grace's car seat while Ava managed the diaper bag, and Caleb bounded ahead, his earlier crisis seemingly forgotten with the resilience only children possessed. "It's not much," Noah said apologetically as he unlocked the door to 3B. "But it's clean, and the neighbors mostly keep to themselves." The apartment was small but tidy, clearly the home of someone trying their best with limited resources. The living room held a worn but comfortable couch, a coffee table marked with crayon scribbles, and a TV that had seen better decades. The kitchen was barely big enough for 2 people to stand in, but it was clean with Caleb's artwork covering the refrigerator and a small table with 3 mismatched chairs. "Caleb's room is down the hall," Noah explained, setting down the car seat. "Mine's next to his. Only 1 bathroom, I'm afraid, and the couch pulls out. It's actually pretty comfortable. I've fallen asleep on it plenty of times." Ava looked around and Noah tried to see it through her eyes, the water stain on the ceiling that the landlord kept promising to fix, the radiator that clanged like a ghost in chains, the windows that rattled when the wind blew. It must have been a far cry from wherever she'd grown up. "It's perfect," she said softly, and Noah could tell she meant it. "It's a home." "Daddy, can I show Grace my room?" Caleb asked, already tugging on Ava's hand. "Grace is sleeping, buddy, but you can show Ava." As Caleb gave an enthusiastic tour pointing out every toy and book and treasure, Noah started making up the couch, trying not to think too hard about what he'd just done. He'd invited strangers into his home, into his life, into his son's life. His budget, already stretched thin, would be pushed to breaking. His carefully maintained routine would be shattered. His quiet, predictable existence was about to become anything but. But as he watched Ava smile at Caleb's earnest explanation of why dinosaurs were the best animals, even though they weren't animals anymore, as he saw her hold Grace with a fierce tenderness that reminded him painfully of Sarah, he felt something he hadn't felt in 2 years. Hope. It was terrifying. That first day stretched into evening with the awkward dance of strangers learning to share space. Noah showed Ava where everything was: towels, extra blankets, the temperamental shower handle that needed to be jiggled just right. He made a simple dinner of spaghetti and jarred sauce, apologizing for the humble meal, but Ava ate like she hadn't seen food in days. "My parents had the hospital restrict my meals," she admitted. "Thought if I was hungry enough, I'd give in about the adoption." Noah's hand tightened on his fork, but he kept his voice neutral. "Well, you eat whatever you want here. Growing girl, nursing mother, you need calories." Grace woke up halfway through dinner crying with the particular urgency of a newborn. Ava tried to soothe her, but the baby kept wailing, her little face red with frustration. "She's hungry. Ava said, looking embarrassed. I need to. Go ahead and feed her, Noah said matter-of-factly. We'll give you privacy. Actually, I could use. I'm having trouble getting her to latch properly. The nurses showed me, but Noah remembered those early days with Caleb Sarah crying from frustration and pain as they both learned the dance of breastfeeding. There's a lactation consultant at the hospital. We could call. They charge $200 for a home visit, Ava said quietly. I looked into it. $200 they didn't have. Noah did quick mental math. Rent was due in a week. Caleb needed new insulin. Next week, the electric bill was already overdue. We'll figure it out, he said. There are videos online, and maybe Diane knows someone who could help for less. We'll figure it out. After dinner, while Ava fed Grace in the bedroom, she'd finally gotten the baby to latch after watching several YouTube videos on Noah's phone. Noah gave Caleb his evening insulin shot and checked his blood sugar. The numbers were good, stable, but he made a mental note to call the endocrinologist first thing Monday to discuss adjusting the dosage. Daddy, why is Ava sad? Caleb asked as Noah prepared him for bed. She's not sad, buddy. She's just tired. Having a baby is hard work. But her mommy and daddy aren't helping. That's not right. Caleb's simple morality cut straight to the heart of it. Families are supposed to help. Yeah, they are, but sometimes families are complicated. Our family isn't complicated, Caleb said with certainty. It's just you and me. And that's enough, right? Right. But maybe now it's you and me and Ava and Grace. Noah tucked the blanket around his son, marveling at the child's easy acceptance. Maybe for a little while. Good. Caleb yawned. It's nice not being the smallest. After Caleb fell asleep, Noah returned to the living room to find Ava on the couch, Grace sleeping in her arms, tears streaming down her face. Hey, he said softly, sitting in the armchair across from her. What's wrong? Is she okay? She's perfect, Ava whispered. But I called my best friend, told her where I was. She said her mom won't let her talk to me anymore. Said, I'm a bad influence now. We've been friends since kindergarten. Noah didn't have words for that kind of cruelty, so he just sat with her while she cried, occasionally getting up to fetch tissues or make tea. Grace slept through it all, blissfully unaware of the storm she'd been born into. Tell me about her father, Noah said eventually. You don't have to, but sometimes talking helps. Ava wiped her eyes, adjusting Grace in her arms. Derek Whitman, star athlete honor roll, heading to Syracuse on a full ride. We dated for 8 months. I thought we were in love. God, I was so stupid. When I told him I was pregnant, he said it wasn't his problem. His parents' lawyer sent my parents a check for medical expenses with the understanding that we'd never contact them again. Did you cash it? My parents did. Put it toward the adoption lawyer. When I refused to sign the papers, they said I owed them that money back. Noah's opinion of Ava's parents, already low, somehow managed to sink further. You don't owe them anything. I know that. Logically, I know that. But they're my parents. They're supposed to love me unconditionally, right? That's what parents do. Good parents, yeah. Noah thought of his own childhood bouncing between foster homes, never quite belonging anywhere. But not all parents are good parents. Sometimes the family you choose is better than the family you're born into. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds Grace's soft breathing and the rattling radiator. Finally, Ava spoke again. Why did you really offer to help us? And don't say it's what your wife would have done. This is about you. Noah considered the question, looking at the photo of Sarah on the side table. When Sarah died, I thought about ending it all. Not actively, but I thought about it. The only thing that kept me going was Caleb. He needed me. Having someone need you, depend on you, it's a reason to get up in the morning. He paused, choosing his words carefully. These past 2 years, I've been going through the motions. Work home, take care of Caleb, sleep, repeat. I've been so focused on not falling apart that I forgot what it felt like to actually live. Tonight, when I heard you fighting for Grace, when I saw you choose her even though it cost you everything, it reminded me that there are still things worth fighting for. Still choices that matter. So we're what your rehabilitation project? No, Noah said firmly. You're a 17-year-old girl who needs help, and I'm a 32-year-old man who needs to remember that helping people is what makes us human. It's not charity, it's connection. We both get something out of this. What if I screw up? What if I'm a terrible mother? What if...
You will screw up, Noah interrupted. You'll make mistakes every single day. Grace will cry and you won't know why. She'll get sick and you'll panic. You'll feel like you're failing her constantly. Welcome to parenthood. Ava looked at him with those two old eyes. How do you stand it, the fear? You love them more than you fear for them. That's the only way through. Grace stirred, making the small snuffling sounds that preceded crying. Ava stood bouncing gently, the instinctive sway of mothers everywhere. I should try to sleep while she's quiet, she said. Thank you, Noah, for everything. I don't know how I'll ever repay it. No debts between friends, Noah said. That's rule number 1. Are we friends? I'd like to be. Ava smiled, the first real smile he'd seen from her. I'd like that too.
As she settled on the pull-out couch with Grace and the bassinet beside her, another loan from Diane's mysterious hospital connections. Noah did a final check on Caleb, then retreated to his own room. He lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of a baby in his home. What had he done? But underneath the fear and uncertainty, something else stirred. For the first time in 2 years, the apartment didn't feel empty. The future, which had stretched ahead in an endless gray monotony of survival, suddenly held possibilities he hadn't dared imagine. His phone buzzed with a text from Diane. Heard what you did? Sarah would be proud. I am too. Noah set the phone aside and closed his eyes, Sarah's voice echoing in his memory. Sometimes the best things happen when you stop playing it safe, Noah. Sometimes you have to jump and trust that you'll figure out how to fly on the way down. I jumped, Sarah, he whispered to the darkness. God help me, I jumped. Outside, the city hummed with its restless energy sirens. In the distance, music from the apartment below, the couple next door arguing about money again. But inside 3B, a strange peace settled over the makeshift family. 4 souls brought together by crisis and kindness, each carrying their own wounds, each offering what healing they could to the others. It wasn't a beginning exactly. Noah and Caleb had been living their story for years, and Ava and Grace's story had started months ago in a different kind of crisis. But it was a convergence, a moment when separate paths merged into something new, something none of them could have predicted. The quiet before the siren had passed. Now came the hard part, learning to live in the aftermath. Learning to build something beautiful from the broken pieces. Learning that sometimes the families we choose are stronger than the ones we're born into. As sleep finally claimed him, Noah's last thought was a prayer not to the God of his childhood. Sunday school, but to Sarah, wherever she was. Help me not screw this up. Help me be enough for all of them. Somewhere in the darkness, a baby cried. A teenage mother sang a lullaby she half remembered from her own childhood. And a 4-year-old boy dreamed of teaching his new sister about dinosaurs. The night stretched on, full of unknown challenges and unimaginable possibilities. This was just the beginning. The morning arrived too soon, heralded by Grace's piercing cry at 4:47 a.m. Noah was already awake, lying in the pre-dawn darkness and listening to Ava's exhausted attempts to soothe her daughter. He'd heard them up at least 3 times during the night, the thin walls of the apartment hiding nothing. When the crying stretched past 15 minutes, he quietly got up and knocked on the living room doorframe. Everything okay? He whispered, finding Ava pacing the small space, Grace wailing against her shoulder. I don't know what's wrong. Ava said, her voice thick with tears and exhaustion. I fed her, changed her, burped her. She just won't stop crying. Noah held out his arms. May I? Ava hesitated for just a moment before transferring the screaming infant. Noah settled Grace against his chest, her tiny body rigid with distress, and began walking in a specific pattern. 3 steps forward, gentle bounce, 2 steps left, slow turn. It was the same dance he'd perfected with Caleb during those endless colicky nights when Sarah had been too weak from her heart condition to help. Sometimes they just need to cry it out, he said softly, maintaining the rhythm. Their nervous systems are still developing. The world is overwhelming. Within minutes, Grace's cries softened to whimpers, then to hiccups, then to silence. She lay against Noah's chest, her tiny fingers curled into his shirt, finally peaceful. How did you do that? Ava asked, wonder and frustration mixing in her voice. Practice, lots and lots of practice. He carefully transferred Grace back to her mother. The trick is staying calm yourself. Babies can sense your stress. It becomes a feedback loop. I don't know if I can do this, Ava admitted, sinking onto the couch with Grace. My parents were right. I'm too young, too stupid. Stop. Noah's voice was firm but kind. You're 17, not stupid. You're sleep-deprived and overwhelmed, which every new parent feels. You know what I did the first week home with Caleb? I called the pediatrician 12 times. 12! The nurse knew my voice by day 3. That earned him a small smile. Really? Really? I was convinced every sound he made meant something was wrong. Turns out babies are just noisy. Who knew? The next few weeks fell into a rhythm that was chaotic, but somehow functional. Noah returned to work, taking every overtime shift he could get to cover the additional expenses. Ava, true to her word, took over cooking and helped with Caleb while learning to navigate motherhood. She had a natural way with Noah's son, patient with his endless questions and careful about his medical needs. Why does Grace cry so much? Caleb asked one evening as Ava prepared dinner. A pot roast she'd found a recipe for online, filling the apartment with scents that reminded Noah painfully of Sunday dinners at Sarah's parents' house before everything fell apart. She can't talk yet, Ava explained, adjusting Grace in the baby wrap Noah had found at a thrift store. Crying is how she tells us things. Like what? Like she's hungry or tired or needs a new diaper or sometimes just that she wants a cuddle. Caleb considered this seriously. I'm glad I can talk. Crying seems hard. The simple observation made both adults laugh, a moment of lightness in what had been a challenging day. Noah had come home to find Ava in tears because Grace had projectile vomited all over the last clean outfit either of them had, and the laundromat was closed for repairs. We'll hand wash them, Noah had said, rolling up his sleeves. Old school style. They'd spent the evening with the bathtub full of soapy water, Noah teaching Ava how to properly hand-wash delicates, while Caleb entertained Grace with increasingly ridiculous faces. It wasn't how any of them had planned to spend their Tuesday night, but there was something almost peaceful about it, the four of them working together on such a mundane task. The first real test came 3 weeks after Ava and Grace moved in. Noah woke at 2 a.m. to Grace's cries, but these were different, sharp, desperate, accompanied by a rattling sound that sent ice through his veins. He found Ava holding her daughter, panic written across her face. She's burning up, Ava said, and listened to her breathing. Noah touched Grace's forehead, definitely feverish, and heard the wheeze that accompanied each breath. Without hesitation, he grabbed his keys. Hospital, now. I can't afford... Now, Ava... The drive to Mercy General was tense, Ava in the back with Grace, while Noah broke several traffic laws. Caleb, hastily bundled into his coat over his pajamas, sat wide-eyed in his booster seat. Is Grace going to be okay? He asked in a small voice. She's going to be fine, buddy, Noah said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Dr. Alvarez was on shift again, and his face showed recognition and concern when he saw them rush in. RSV, he diagnosed after a quick examination. Respiratory syncytial virus. Common in infants, but it can be serious. We'll need to admit her for observation and breathing treatments. Ava looked like she might collapse. This is my fault. I didn't protect her. I should have... This is nobody's fault, Dr. Alvarez said firmly. RSV is everywhere this time of year. You did the right thing bringing her in immediately. They spent 3 days at the hospital taking shifts staying with Grace while she received breathing treatments and IV fluids. Noah called in sick to work his foreman's patients wearing thin, but he couldn't leave Ava alone to handle this. He remembered too well the terror of watching your child struggle to breathe. It was during the second night, as they sat in uncomfortable chairs watching Grace's oxygen levels on the monitor, that Ava told him more about her family. My mother had me when she was 35, she said quietly. Everything planned, everything perfect. The right husband, the right house, the right time. I was supposed to be perfect too. Private schools, violin lessons, SAT prep starting in 8th grade. I was going to Yale, then law school, then join my father's firm. She laughed bitterly. Then Derek happened. One party too much wine, and suddenly their perfect daughter was pregnant at 16. You should have seen their faces when I told them, like I died right there in their marble kitchen. Did they ever consider supporting you? My mother's first words were, "We'll handle this," not "Are you okay?" or "We love you." Just, "We'll handle this." Like I was a problem to be solved, not their daughter who needed them. Noah reached over and squeezed her hand. Their loss. Grace is amazing. She is, isn't she? Ava looked at her daughter, tiny in the hospital crib, fighting so hard to breathe. I would do anything for her, die for her, kill for her if I had to. That's what makes you a good mother, that fierce love. Is that how you feel about Caleb? Every second of every day, it's terrifying and wonderful and exhausting all at once. On the third day, Grace's breathing improved enough for discharge. The hospital social worker, Patricia, made another appearance, checking on their living situation and Ava's well-being. You've taken on a lot, Mr. Reed, she observed, watching Noah help Ava pack up their things while juggling Caleb's needs.
We're managing, he said simply. I can see that. Ava, there are programs that might help. WIC for formula and food Medicaid for Grace's medical care. I applied, Ava said, but my parents claimed me on their taxes last year, so there are complications. Patricia's expression hardened. They kicked you out, but are still claiming you as a dependent. They said I owe them for the medical expenses they paid. That's not how that works. I'll help you file the paperwork to get that sorted. No one should profit from abandoning their child. Back home, they settled into a new normal that accounted for Grace's vulnerability. Noah baby-proofed the apartment as much as possible, sealing drafts and running a humidifier to help with her breathing. Ava became hypervigilant about hand-washing and visitors, though they had few enough of those. The visitor they did have surprised everyone. Mrs. Chen from 3C appeared at their door one evening with a pot of soup and a no-nonsense expression. The elderly Chinese woman had lived in the building for 20 years and rarely spoke to anyone, but she'd apparently been watching their comings and goings. Baby's sick, I heard, she said in accented English, pushing past Noah to set the soup on the stove. This help, traditional recipe, good for breathing. She examined Grace with gentle hands, nodding approvingly at how Ava held her. Young mother, but good mother, she declared. You, she pointed at Noah. Good man, stupid, but good. Stupid? Noah asked, amused rather than offended. Taken strangers, no money, small apartment. Stupid, but good heart. Like my husband, dead now, but was same kind of stupid. She began appearing regularly after that, bringing food holding Grace, while Ava showered, teaching her remedies from her homeland. She even watched Caleb sometimes when Noah had to work late and Ava had to take Grace to appointments. Why are you helping us? Ava asked one day. Mrs. Chen's weathered face softened. I came here 40 years ago, pregnant, no English husband, working 3 jobs. Neighbors helped. Now I help. Is the way. The way. Noah thought about that a lot. The way people were supposed to be with each other, but so often weren't. Money remained tight, tighter than ever, with the additional mouths to feed and Grace's medical needs. Noah started selling things: his good watch that Sarah had given him for their anniversary, some tools he could spare his grandfather's coin collection that he'd been saving for Caleb's college fund. You can't keep doing this, Ava said when she caught him pricing his wedding ring at a pawn shop. I'm not selling this, he said, closing his fist around the simple gold band. This is my line. But everything else is just stuff. We need formula and diapers more than I need a watch. Ava bit her lip, then made a decision. I'm going to call Derek's parents. Ava. Not for me, for Grace. She's their granddaughter, whether they like it or not. They should contribute something. The call did not go well. Noah could hear the man's raised voice from across the room, words like blackmail and restraining order cutting through the air. Ava hung up with shaking hands. He said if I contact them again, they'll sue for harassment. He said Grace is nothing to them. Nothing. That night, after both children were asleep, Noah found Ava on the couch, staring at nothing. I need to get a job, she said. I can't keep taking from you. You're not taking, you're contributing. The cooking, the cleaning, helping with Caleb. It's not enough. You're drowning Noah, I can see it. The bills on the counter the way you count every dollar at the grocery store. I'm making your life harder. Noah sat beside her, choosing his words carefully. You know what my life was before you and Grace work home, Caleb sleep repeat. Empty.
going through the motions. You think you're making my life harder? You're making it worth living. That's not fair to put on me. I'm not putting anything on you. I'm telling you that having you here, having Grace here, it's changed something. Caleb's happier. He loves being a big brother, and I forgot what it felt like to have someone to talk to at the end of the day. Someone who understands how hard it is. We can't be your emotional support system, Noah. That's not healthy. She was right, of course. But knowing something and feeling it were different things. Then what do you want to do? He asked. Because if you want to leave, I won't stop you, but I don't want you to go. I want to get my GED, get a job, pay you back. No paying back. That's not what this is. Then what is it? Noah struggled to find words for something he didn't fully understand himself. It's family. Messy, complicated, chosen family. Ava was quiet for a long moment. Derek's mother said I was ruining Grace's life by keeping her. That I was selfish. Do you believe that? Sometimes, when she's crying and I don't know how to help. When I see other teenage girls going to school, hanging out with friends, being normal, I wonder if I made the right choice. Look at me, Noah said, waiting until she met his eyes. There is no right choice. There's just the choice you make and how you live with it. You chose Grace. Now you choose her every day when you're tired, when you're scared, when you doubt yourself. That's not selfish. That's love. A week later, their fragile stability was shattered when Noah came home to find the door to their apartment ajar, the lock broken. Inside was chaos, furniture, overturned belongings, scattered Caleb's insulin supplies thrown across the floor. Ava sat on the couch, clutching Grace, both of them crying. Mrs. Chen was beside her, holding a bag of frozen peas to a bruise forming on Ava's cheek. What happened? Noah dropped to his knees in front of them, checking them over for injuries. 3 men, Mrs. Chen said grimly. Looking for someone named Marco. Wrong apartment, but they don't care. Push their way in. They kept asking about money, Ava said through her tears. Said Marco owed them. I told them we didn't know any Marco, but they didn't believe me. They went through everything. One of them, he grabbed me, said maybe I could pay Marco's debt another way. Noah's vision went red. Did he? Mrs. Chen hit him with her cane? Ava managed a shaky laugh. You should have seen her, like something out of an action movie. They left after that, but they said they'd be back if Marco didn't pay. Noah pulled out his phone to call the police, but Mrs. Chen stopped him. No police, she said firmly. These men, they dangerous. Police make it worse. You need to leave. Leave. This is our home. Not safe now. They come back. Noah looked around the destroyed apartment at Caleb's drawings torn from the refrigerator at the broken frame holding Sarah's picture. She was right. Even if these men realized they had the wrong apartment, the damage was done. The sense of safety was shattered. Where would we go? Ava asked. I have cousin, Mrs. Chen said. Owns building in Sunset Park. Not fancy, but safe. Good neighborhood, lots of families. I can't afford to move, Noah said. First month, last month, security deposit. I loan you Mrs. Chen said firmly. No argue. You pay back when you can. Mrs. Chen, I can't. You can. You will. For children you will. Noah looked at Caleb's destroyed room, at Grace sleeping fitfully in Ava's arms. Despite the chaos at the insulin supplies, he'd have to carefully check and probably replace. They couldn't stay here. Okay, he said quietly. Okay. The move happened quickly. Friends Noah didn't even know he had emerging to help. His foreman, Gruff Gary, who'd been threatening to fire him, showed up with his pickup truck and his teenage sons. Diane from the hospital appeared with boxes and packing tape. Even Patricia, the social worker, came by with groceries and gift cards from emergency funds. The new apartment was in a different world from their old neighborhood. Sunset Park buzzed with life families in the park, kids playing on stoops, the smell of food from a dozen different cultures. The building was older but well-maintained with a superintendent who actually fixed things and neighbors who smiled in the hallways. It was a 3-bedroom which seemed impossible, but Mrs. Chen's cousin, Mr. Gis, Lou explained, Mrs. Chen, she helped my family long time ago. Now I help her family. We're not her family, Noah protested. Mr. Liu looked at him like he was particularly dense. You her family now, she decides so it is. The extra bedroom changed everything. Ava had privacy, a door she could close, a space that was hers. They set it up as a combination bedroom and study area with a desk they found at a thrift store where she could work on her GED materials. Grace's crib fit perfectly next to Ava's bed, close enough for nighttime feedings, but giving them both better sleep than the living room had allowed. Caleb was thrilled to keep his own room immediately covering the walls with his drawings and dinosaur posters. It's too much, Ava said the first night standing in her doorway. The apartment, the help, everything. I don't deserve— Stop, Noah said. This isn't about deserving. This is about people taking care of each other. Mr. Liu is right, we're family now. All of us, even Mrs. Chen, especially Mrs. Chen. She's something else, Ava laughed. Did you see her hit that guy? He was twice her size. Remind me never to make her angry. They settled into their new life with surprising ease. The neighborhood embraced them, perhaps seeing nothing unusual about a young father, a teenage mother, and their children making a family together. The Korean grandmother next door brought kimchi. The Dominican family upstairs invited them to birthday parties. The white hipster couple across the hall offered baby clothes their toddler had outgrown. Ava threw herself into studying for her GED with fierce determination. Noah would often find her at the kitchen table late at night, Grace sleeping in the wrap against her chest, while she worked through math problems. You don't have to push so hard, he told her one night, setting down a cup of tea beside her. Yes, I do, she said without looking up. Every day I don't have this degree is another day I can't provide for Grace properly. You're 17, give yourself time. I don't have time. Grace needs things now. You need help now. She passed the GED on her first try, crying when the results came in. Noah took them all out for pizza to celebrate, even though it wasn't in the budget. Some things were more important than money. The job search was harder. Most places wouldn't hire someone under 18, and those that would wanted availability Ava couldn't provide with a baby. I could watch Grace while you work, Noah offered. You already work 60 hours a week. When would you sleep? The solution came from an unexpected source. Diane called with news of an opening at the hospital, not medical, but in the cafeteria. The hours were early morning, which meant Noah could watch Grace before his shift, and Ava would be home when Caleb got back from preschool. It's not glamorous, Diane warned. I'll take it, Ava said immediately. She started the next week getting up at 4 a.m. to feed Grace before leaving her with Noah. It was exhausting for everyone, but Ava's first paycheck, small as it was, represented something huge. I want to pay rent, she announced. Ava? Not all of it. I know I can't afford that yet, but something. I need to contribute. They negotiated a small amount, far less than her fair share, but enough to preserve her dignity. Noah put the money in an envelope marked Grace's College Fund, though he didn't tell Ava that. Winter came hard and fast, bringing new challenges. The heating in the new apartment was better, but Grace caught cold after cold, each one sending Ava into a spiral of anxiety after the RSV scare. She's okay, Noah assured her during one particularly bad night, Grace coughing that awful barking cough that sounded worse than it was. Kids get sick. It builds their immune system. What if it's not just a cold? What if I miss something serious? Then we go to the hospital. That's what it's there for. Easy for you to say. Caleb's on your insurance. It was true, and it was a problem Noah didn't know how to solve. Medicaid covered some things, but not everything, and the bills were piling up despite Patricia's help navigating the system. The breaking point came when Caleb's insulin pump malfunctioned. Insurance would cover a replacement, but not for 3 weeks, which meant going back to multiple daily injections in the meantime. I'm scared, Daddy, Caleb admitted as Noah prepared the first injection. What if I get really sick again? You won't. We're watching you so carefully, but I know it's scary, buddy. Is this because of money? The question hit Noah like a punch. What makes you think that? I heard you on the phone. You said we couldn't afford the expedited replacement. Noah set down the syringe and pulled Caleb into his lap. Money is tight, yeah, but we're okay. We have everything we need. Is it because of Ava and Grace, or are they why we don't have money? No, buddy, no. Things have been tight since Mama died. Ava and Grace are family now. We take care of family. Even when it's hard. especially when it's hard. That night, after both kids were asleep, Noah found Ava packing her things. "What are you doing? Leaving," she said without looking at him. "Caleb needs that pump. You could afford it if we weren't here." Noah grabbed the suitcase from her hands. "Don't you dare." "Noah, no, you don't get to make that choice for us. You don't get to decide what we need or don't need. Your son needs medical equipment, and he'll get it. We'll figure it out. We always do." How do we figure this out? You're already working yourself to death. I see you, Noah. The double shifts, the side jobs. You're exhausted. So are you. Up at 4 a.m., working, studying, taking care of Grace. We're both exhausted. That's what being a parent means. But Caleb loves you and Grace. Leaving would hurt him more than waiting 3 weeks for a pump. Ava sank onto her bed, tears streaming down her face. "I'm making everything worse." Noah sat beside her, careful to maintain appropriate distance. "You want to know what would be worse? Going back to that empty apartment, just me and Caleb existing instead of living. You and Grace, you've made us a family again. That's worth more than any amount of money. Your wife would have handled this better. Sarah would have loved you," Noah said softly. "She would have admired your strength, your determination. She would have been proud to call you family." Grace stirred in her crib, making the small sounds that meant she'd be awake soon. Ava moved to pick her up, then stopped. "I got a call today," she said quietly, "from my mother." Noah's stomach clenched. "What did she want?" "To see if I'd changed my mind. She said the adoption could still be arranged, said they'd pay for everything, apartment, college, fresh start. All I have to do is give up Grace." "What did you tell her?" Ava picked up her daughter, holding her close. "I told her I already have a family, that Grace has an uncle and a brother and a grandmother who hits people with canes. I told her we don't need her money." "Was she angry?" "She said I'd regret it, said I was throwing my life away for nothing." "Do you think you are—" Ava looked at Grace, then at Noah, then toward the door where Caleb slept. "I'm 17 years old. I have a beautiful daughter, a job, a home with people who actually care about us. How is that throwing my life away?" The next morning brought unexpected relief. Gary showed up at their door with an envelope. "The guys at the site took up a collection," he said gruffly, not meeting Noah's eyes. "For the pump thing. Heard from Mrs. Chen your boy needed it faster. And inside was enough money for the expedited replacement with some left over. Gary, I can't." "You can and you will. You're a good worker, Reed. Good man. We take care of our own." After Gary left, Noah sat at the kitchen table, overwhelmed by the kindness of people he'd barely thought knew his name. "You okay?" Ava asked, finding him there. "People are good," he said, voice thick with emotion. "Sometimes I forget that, but people are mostly good." "You're good," she said. "That's why good comes back to you." Spring arrived slowly that year, creeping into Brooklyn with tentative sunshine and the first green shoots in Sunset Park. Grace was almost 14 months old now, taking her first wobbling steps, while holding onto the coffee table, her delighted squeals filling the apartment whenever she managed to stand on her own for a few seconds. Caleb, now 5 and preparing for kindergarten in the fall, had appointed himself her personal cheerleader and protector, cushioning her falls with pillows he strategically placed around the living room. "She's going to walk today, I can feel it," he announced one Saturday morning, setting up what he called Grace's walking course, between the couch and the armchair. Ava laughed from the kitchen where she was making pancakes, a Saturday tradition that had developed over the months. "You said that yesterday, Cal. But today's different. Today's special." Noah looked up from the bills he was reviewing at the table, a task that had become slightly less terrifying lately. Ava's steady income from the hospital cafeteria, combined with some recent overtime on a construction project, had given them breathing room they hadn't had in months. Not comfort, certainly not luxury, but room to breathe. "What makes today special, buddy?" Noah asked, setting aside the papers. "Just feels special," Caleb said with the certainty only a 5-year-old could muster. As if on cue, Grace pulled herself up on the couch, looked directly at Caleb with determination that reminded Noah painfully of Ava, and took 3 independent steps before falling onto her padded bottom. The apartment erupted in celebration. Caleb danced around shouting, I told you," while Ava rushed from the kitchen, spatula still in hand, tears streaming down her face as she scooped up her daughter. You did it, baby girl. You walked. Noah found himself grinning like an idiot, his phone already out to capture the moment as Grace, encouraged by the reaction, pulled herself up to try again. This time, she managed 5 steps before Caleb caught her in a gentle hug. I'm the best big brother ever, he declared, and Noah couldn't argue with that. Mrs. Chen arrived for her weekly Saturday visit just as they were sitting down to pancakes Grace in her high chair, enthusiastically smearing maple syrup across her face. Walking baby now, she observed with satisfaction. Good, strong girl like her mother. Like her grandmother, too, Ava said, squeezing Mrs. Chen's hand. The older woman's tough exterior cracked, just slightly, a small smile playing at her lips. Over the past months, their makeshift family had solidified into something real and lasting. Mrs. Chen came for dinner every Saturday and Wednesday, teaching Ava to cook traditional Chinese dishes while regaling them with stories of her youth in Beijing. Gary from the construction site had started bringing Caleb to the occasional Giants game, gruffly claiming he had extra tickets that would go to waste otherwise. Even Diane from the hospital had become a regular presence, stopping by with hand-me-downs from her grown children's baby years, and staying for coffee that turned into long conversations about life loss and moving forward. Grace has her 1-year checkup next week, Ava mentioned as they ate. Dr. Martinez wants to make sure her lungs are developing properly after the RSV. Which day? Noah asked, already mentally reviewing his work schedule. Thursday at 2. You don't have to come. I know you're working on that big project. I'll be there, he said firmly. He'd made it to every important appointment, rearranging his schedule however necessary. Being there wasn't just about support, it was about being family, being present for the milestones and the mundane moments alike. The following Thursday arrived gray and drizzly, matching none of their moods as they prepared for the hospital visit. Grace, now confident in her walking abilities, toddled around the apartment in the tiny sneakers Mrs. Chen had bought her, resistant to being constrained in her stroller. Come on, princess, and Ava coaxed, trying to buckle her in. We're going to see Dr. Martinez. You like her, remember. She has the funny glasses. Grace's response was to arch her back and let out a protest that could probably be heard 3 floors down. Here, Noah said, pulling out his phone. Grace want to see the video of you walking. Instantly distracted, Grace settled into the stroller, mesmerized by watching herself on the screen. Ava shot him a grateful look. You're getting good at this, she said. Learning from the best, he replied, meaning it. Watching Ava with Grace over the past year had taught him things about parenting. He'd never learned with Caleb, perhaps because he'd been too deep in grief to really see before. Caleb was at preschool, the Norman Thomas Day School, having accepted him on a partial scholarship that Patricia had helped them apply for. It was a good school with understanding teachers who knew how to handle his diabetes management, and Caleb loved it with the passionate intensity he brought to everything. The ride to Mercy General was familiar now. The subway route memorized the rhythm of the city, something Grace found soothing rather than overwhelming. She babbled happily in her stroller, pointing at dogs and pigeons with equal enthusiasm, while Ava and Noah discussed the mundane logistics that made up their shared life. I picked up an extra shift on Sunday, Ava mentioned. Time and a half for the holiday weekend. I can take the kids to the park, Noah offered. Maybe pack a picnic if the weather's good. Caleb would love that. He's been asking about flying his kite. They moved through these conversations with the ease of people who had learned each other's rhythms, who had figured out how to be partners in the strange family they'd created. Not romantic partners that line had never been crossed. Both of them too aware of the complications it would bring, too protective of what they'd built to risk it on something that might not work. But partners nonetheless in all the ways that mattered for raising their children. Mercy General's pediatric wing had been renovated since their last visit, the walls now covered with bright murals of underwater scenes that Grace found fascinating. She pressed her face against the glass of the new aquarium in the waiting room, laughing at the fish, while Ava filled out paperwork. Insurance, the receptionist asked. Medicaid. Ava replied, no longer ashamed of it. She was 18 now, legally an adult, working full-time raising her daughter. She had nothing to be ashamed of. The checkup went smoothly. Dr. Martinez, a warm woman in her 50s with the promised funny glasses cat-eye frames with tiny rhinestones, pronounced, Grace perfectly healthy, her lungs clear, her development on track. She's small for her age, but that's genetic, not nutritional, she assured Ava. You're doing everything right. Hear that? Noah said to Ava as they prepared to leave. Everything right. Ava blushed slightly, but smiled, gathering Grace, who was trying to grab the stethoscope from Dr. Martinez's neck. They were heading toward the elevator when it happened, the moment that would change everything, the fulcrum on which their future would pivot. The pediatric wing's elevator was older, slower, requiring a key card that the nurse at the desk provided. They entered with Grace in Ava's arms, Noah pressing the button for the lobby. Just as the doors were closing, a man slipped in, breathing hard, carrying a black duffel bag that he clutched against his chest. Noah's instincts, honed by years of construction sites and rough neighborhoods, immediately went on alert. The man was youngish, maybe late 20s, with the jittery energy of someone on something or coming down from something. His eyes darted constantly and sweat beaded his forehead despite the cool day. Going down? Noah asked carefully, his body automatically shifting to put himself between the stranger and Ava. The man didn't answer, just nodded sharply, his hand going into the duffel bag. Time seemed to slow as Noah saw the gun emerge black and brutal in the fluorescent light of the elevator. His mind processed multiple things simultaneously. Ava's sharp intake of breath, Grace beginning to cry at the sudden tension, the sound of sirens in the distance growing closer, the way the man's hand shook as he pointed the weapon vaguely in their direction. "Nobody move," the man said, his voice high and desperate. "Just, nobody move." "Okay," Noah said, his voice remarkably calm considering his heart was trying to punch through his chest. "We're not moving. Everything's okay." "It's not okay," the man shouted, the gun swinging wildly. "Nothing's okay. They're coming. They're all coming, and I need... What do you need?" Noah kept his voice steady, therapeutic, the way he talked to Caleb during his worst diabetic episodes when confusion set in. "Maybe we can help." "The pharmacy," the man said, and suddenly it all made sense. The hospital had been in the news recently for tightening security around their pharmaceutical supplies after a series of thefts. This man had probably tried to rob the pharmacy, failed, and was now trapped in an elevator with innocent bystanders. "Okay," Noah said. "The pharmacy. You needed medicine." "They wouldn't give it to me," the man said, and now Noah could see tears mixing with the sweat on his face. "My girl, she's sick. She needs..." They said without insurance, without money. $2,000 for medicine. $2,000. Grace's crying had escalated to full wails now, the sound sharp and distressing in the confined space. The gun swung toward the sound and Noah's blood turned to ice. "Please," Ava said, her voice shaking as she turned to shield Grace with her body. "She's just a baby. She's scared." "Shut her up," the man shouted. The gun now pointed directly at them. "Shut her up or I'll..." That's when the elevator lurched to a stop between floors. The emergency system had been activated, Noah realized. The police were here following protocol for an active threat in the hospital. The man panicked, slamming his fist against the elevator buttons, the gun waving erratically. An alarm began to sound high and piercing, making Grace scream even louder. "They trapped me," the man said, his voice breaking. "They trapped me, and now... The gun steadied, pointed directly at Grace and Ava. Noah didn't think. There was no conscious decision, no moment of weighing options or considering consequences. There was only the fundamental truth that had governed his life since Sarah died, intensified beyond measure since Ava and Grace had entered it: protect the family. Whatever the cost, protect the family. He stepped forward, placing his chest directly against the barrel of the gun. "Point it at me," he said quietly, his eyes locked on the gunman's. "Whatever you're going to do, you do it to me, not them." "Noah, no," Ava's voice behind him desperate. "Take care of your sister, Ava," Noah said, without turning around, the words coming from somewhere deep and certain. "Take care of Caleb. Promise me." "Stop it!" the gunman shouted, but Noah could see the confusion in his eyes, the plan derailing. "You said your girl is sick." Noah continued, his voice still impossibly calm, even as he felt the cold metal through his shirt. You're a father trying to save his child. I understand that. I'm a father too. That's my son's sister crying behind me. Please. Whatever happens, let it happen to me. The sirens were louder now, probably right outside. The elevator intercom crackled to life. This is the NYPD. We have the building surrounded. Release the hostages and— There are no hostages, Noah shouted toward the intercom, not breaking eye contact with the gunman. Just a misunderstanding. This man needs help. His daughter is sick. Shut up. The gunman pressed the gun harder against Noah's chest. You don't know— I know you're not a killer, Noah said. I know you're desperate and scared and trying to save someone you love. That doesn't make you evil. It makes you human. They won't understand, the man said, and Noah could see him crumbling the weight of what he'd done crashing down. They'll lock me up, and my girl, she'll die without me. She'll— The intercom crackled again, and this time Noah recognized the voice, Dr. Alvarez. This is Dr. Marcus Alvarez. I'm the head of emergency medicine. Sir, if your daughter is sick, let me help. Tell me what she needs. The gunman looked at the intercom, then at Noah, then at Ava and Grace behind him. Grace had quieted to hiccuping sobs, and in the relative quiet they could all hear the tactical teams in the shaft above. Insulin, the man whispered. She needs insulin, type 1 diabetes. We lost our insurance when I lost my job, and the pharmacy wanted $2,000 for a month's supply, and I don't have insulin. Noah repeated, his voice breaking slightly. Your daughter has type 1 diabetes. She's 6, the man said, tears flowing freely now. 6 years old, and they wanted to let her die for money. Noah thought of Caleb, of the night spent monitoring blood sugar, of the terrifying hospital visits, of the insulin that kept his son alive, and that, yes, cost more than it should, more than any parent should have to pay. My son has it too, Noah said softly. Type 1. He's 5. The gun wavered. Dr. Alvarez, Noah called out, not looking away from the gunman. This man's daughter needs insulin. Can the hospital— We'll provide it. Alvarez's voice came immediately. A full month's supply, no questions asked. Sir, I give you my word as a physician. Put down the gun and we'll help your daughter. They'll arrest me, the man said. I'll go to prison and she'll be alone. You'll get a lawyer, Noah said. A good one. Extenuating circumstances. But only if nobody gets hurt. Only if this ends now. The man looked at him for a long moment, then at Ava and Grace, then at the gun in his hand, as if seeing it for the first time. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. I couldn't watch her die. I know, Noah said. Any parent would understand, but this isn't the way. Put it down. Let them help. Slowly, so slowly, the man began to lower the gun. That's when everything went wrong. The elevator suddenly jerked back to life, the emergency override kicking in. The sudden movement startled everyone. The gunman's finger, already on the trigger, tightened reflexively. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. Noah felt the impact like a sledgehammer to his chest, driving him backward. He heard Ava scream, heard Grace wailing, heard the gun clatter to the floor as the gunman dropped it in horror. No, the man shouted. I didn't mean— Noah was on the floor, though he didn't remember falling. The pain was extraordinary, like nothing he'd ever experienced, not even when he'd broken 3 ribs in a construction accident. He could taste copper in his mouth, could feel warmth spreading across his shirt. Ava was suddenly there, her hands pressing against his chest, tears streaming down her face. Stay with me, Noah. Stay with me. The elevator doors opened to Chaos Police medical personnel shouting and movement, but Noah only had eyes for Ava, and beyond her, Grace in someone's arms, crying but safe. Take care of them, he managed to say, blood making the words thick. Stop talking like that, Ava sobbed. You're going to be fine. But Noah had worked enough construction sites, seen enough accidents to know what the spreading pool of blood meant, what the strange coldness creeping up his limbs signified. Tell Caleb, he gasped, finding it harder to draw breath. Tell him I love him. Tell him to take care of his sisters. Sisters? Ava's voice was confused through her tears. Noah managed a small smile. You and Grace, you're his sisters, all my girls.
Dr. Alvarez was there now, hands working frantically, shouting orders Noah couldn't quite understand. The world was going gray at the edges, sounds becoming distant and hollow. "Get him to OR 3 now!" Alvarez's voice sharp with urgency. They were moving the ceiling tiles, flashing past like an old movie reel. Noah saw faces, nurses he recognized, Patricia the social worker with her hand over her mouth, Diane running alongside the gurney with tears streaming down her face. "Noah, you stay with us," Diane commanded. "You hear me? Caleb needs you. Ava needs you. You don't get to leave." But Noah was tired, so tired. It would be easy to let go, to drift away from the pain and the struggle and the constant worry about money and insulin and keeping everyone safe. Then he heard Grace crying somewhere behind them, that particular wail that meant she was scared but not hurt, and something in him rallied. Not yet. Not like this. "OR 3 is ready," someone shouted. "He's losing too much blood," another voice. "Type and cross-match now." "Noah." Dr. Alvarez was leaning over him as they burst through doors. "The bullet hit your subclavian artery. We're going to surgery right now. You're going to fight, understand. You're going to fight." Noah tried to nod, but the movement was beyond him. The anesthesia mask descended over his face, and his last coherent thought was a prayer not for himself, but for Caleb, who couldn't lose another parent. For Ava, who'd already been abandoned by too many people. For Grace, who deserved to grow up in a home full of love. For the family he'd chosen and who had chosen him back. The darkness claimed him, but not gently. It was a violent wrenching away from consciousness, his body's desperate attempt to preserve what little blood remained for vital organs. In the OR, Dr. Alvarez and his team worked with controlled desperation hands, moving in practice synchronization. "Clamp!" Alvarez called out, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his forehead. "I need better visualization. There's too much blood." "Pressure's dropping," the anesthesiologist reported. 70/40. "Push another 2 units, Alvarez ordered, his hands working inside Noah's chest cavity. "Come on, Noah, don't you dare give up." In the waiting room, Ava sat in a plastic chair with Grace in her lap, both of them covered in Noah's blood. Someone she didn't know who had brought her a blanket, but she couldn't stop shaking. Mrs. Chen sat beside her, having appeared within minutes of the news, spreading her weathered hand, gripping Ava's with surprising strength. "He's strong," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "Stupid but strong. He'll survive." "There was so much blood," Ava whispered. "So much blood." "Blood can be replaced. The spirit, the will to live, that cannot. He has both." Patricia appeared with Caleb, who'd been pulled from preschool. The moment he saw Ava, he ran to her, throwing his small arms around her and Grace. "Where's Daddy?" he asked, his voice small and scared. "Mrs. Patricia said he was hurt." Ava pulled him close, struggling to find words that wouldn't terrify him, but wouldn't lie either. "Daddy's with the doctors, sweetheart. They're taking care of him. Like when I was sick, when my sugar was bad." "Yes, like that." "Then he'll be okay," Caleb said with the faith of a child. "Dr. Alvarez fixed me. He'll fix Daddy, too." The gunman had been arrested, Ava learned from the police officer who came to take her statement. His name was Marcus Rodriguez. Unemployed electrician. Single father to a 6-year-old daughter named Isabella, who did indeed have type 1 diabetes. He'd been trying to rob the pharmacy when security cornered him, forcing him to flee into the elevator. "He's being charged with armed robbery and aggravated assault," the officer explained. "You'll need to testify." "He didn't mean to shoot," Ava said, surprising herself with the words. "The elevator jerked. It was an accident." The officer looked skeptical. "He brought a loaded gun into a hospital, ma'am. He was desperate. His daughter was dying." "That doesn't excuse—" "I know it doesn't," Ava interrupted. But Noah understood. Even with a gun pointed at him, he understood. That has to count for something. 3 hours passed. 3 hours of Grace fussing and finally falling asleep. 3 hours of Caleb asking increasingly worried questions. 3 hours of Mrs. Chen maintaining her iron grip on Ava's hand while murmuring what might have been prayers in Mandarin. Finally, Dr. Alvarez appeared, still in his surgical scrub's blood. Noah's blood still visible on his shoes. Ava stood so quickly she almost dropped Grace. "Is he alive?" Alvarez said quickly.
He's alive, but it was close. The bullet nicked his subclavian artery and collapsed his lung. We repaired the damage, but he lost a lot of blood. A lot. But he'll be okay, Caleb asked, his small voice cutting through the medical terminology. Dr. Alvarez knelt down to Caleb's level. Your dad is very sick right now, but he's strong and he's fighting. We're doing everything we can. Can we see him? Ava asked. He's being moved to the ICU. Once he's settled, 2 visitors at a time. He's not conscious yet. We have him sedated while his body recovers from the trauma. The ICU was a world of machines and monitors, each beep and hiss, a reminder of how close to the edge Noah had come. He looked small in the hospital bed, pale and still, in a way that seemed fundamentally wrong for someone usually so vital, so present. Ava approached slowly, Caleb's hand in hers. Grace was with Mrs. Chen in the waiting room, the elderly woman insisting Ava needed this time without distraction. Daddy, Caleb whispered, reaching for Noah's hand, careful of the IV lines. He's sleeping, baby, Ava explained. The medicine is helping him heal. Should I tell him about Grace walking? Maybe he forgot, and he'll want to know. Ava's eyes filled with tears. Yes, tell him. So Caleb did, his young voice filling the sterile room with stories about Grace's first steps, about the pancakes that morning, that felt like a lifetime ago, about the picture he'd drawn at school that he couldn't wait to show his daddy. And Ava's here too, Caleb added. She's crying, but trying not to. She does that sometimes, but it's okay, right, Daddy? Crying is okay when you're sad or scared. Ava was openly weeping now, sinking into the chair beside Noah's bed. I'm sorry, she whispered when Caleb went to the bathroom. I'm so sorry. This is my fault. If you hadn't taken us in, if you hadn't been in that elevator with us, stop. The word was barely a breath, but it made Ava's head snap up. Noah's eyes were open just barely, but they were focused on her. Noah. She grabbed his hand, careful of his injuries. Don't try to talk. I'll get the doctor. Not your fault. He managed each word, clearly costing him. You almost died protecting us. Would do it again. His fingers squeezed hers weakly. Family protects family. Dr. Alvarez arrived quickly, checking monitors and adjusting medications. Welcome back, he said to Noah. You gave us quite a scare. The man, Noah whispered. His daughter. Alvarez looked surprised. You were shot, and you're asking about the shooter's child. Diabetic? Needs insulin. The hospital is providing her medication, Alvarez assured him, and there's a fund being set up. Apparently your story is already on the news. People are donating. Noah managed a small smile before the pain medication pulled him back under. Over the next days, Noah drifted in and out of consciousness. Each time he woke, someone was there, Ava reading to him from the newspaper, Caleb showing him drawings, Mrs. Chen forcing him to sip her mysterious healing broths that the nurses definitely hadn't approved, but turned a blind eye to Diane, keeping him updated on hospital gossip. Gary and the construction crew stopping by after their shifts. On the 3rd day, he woke to find Ava asleep in the chair beside his bed. Grace on her lap, both of them covered by his hospital blanket. The tenderness of the scene made his chest ache in a way that had nothing to do with his injuries. They haven't left, Diane said softly from the doorway. Ava's been here round the clock. We've been taking shifts with Caleb, but she won't go home. This is home, Noah said, his voice stronger now. Wherever we're all together, that's home, Diane smiled. Sarah would have loved this. Loved them. I know. The shooter, Marcus, his lawyer, wants to know if you'll provide a statement about his state of mind, his daughter's condition. Noah didn't hesitate. Yes, whatever helps him get back to his little girl. Noah, he shot you. He's a desperate father who made a terrible mistake. I could have been him, Diane. If I couldn't afford Caleb's insulin, if I had to watch him dying, I don't know what I'd do. The story had indeed made the news. Local hero takes bullet-protecting teen mom and baby. The headlines made Noah cringe, but the attention had unexpected benefits. Donations poured in not just for Marcus Rodriguez's daughter, but for Caleb's medical expenses, for Grace's care, for Ava's education. Someone had even started a college fund for all three children. $20,000 so far, Patricia reported, showing him the fundraising page on her phone. People are calling you a hero. I'm not a hero, Noah protested. I just did what anyone would do. No, Ava said firmly, having woken during the conversation. Not anyone. You. The recovery was slow and painful. The damage to his lung meant breathing exercises that felt like torture. The arterial repair meant limited movement of his left arm for weeks. Physical therapy was grueling, and there were setbacks, an infection that required additional surgery, a blood clot scare that had everyone terrified. But slowly, steadily, Noah healed. The day he was finally discharged 6 weeks after the shooting, the entire pediatric staff lined the hallways to applaud. Marcus Rodriguez was there too, out on bail, his daughter Isabella beside him. I'm sorry, Marcus said, tears streaming down his face. I'm so sorry. Noah, leaning heavily on a walker but standing on his own, looked at the man who'd shot him. Then he looked at Isabella, thin and pale, but alive, a continuous glucose monitor visible on her arm. Take care of your daughter, Noah said simply. That's all any of us can do. The ride home was quiet, Caleb and Grace both asleep in their car seats, exhausted from the excitement. Ava drove Noah's old truck carefully, still getting used to the manual transmission he'd been teaching her on. I thought I was going to lose you, she said finally. When you stepped in front of that gun when I saw you fall, I thought... But you didn't, Noah interrupted gently. I'm here. We're all here. Why did you do it? Really? Noah was quiet for a long moment, watching the familiar streets of Sunset Park pass by. My whole life I've been looking for where I belong. Foster homes, group homes, always temporary, always conditional. Then Sarah found me, and for a while I had that feeling of being exactly where you're supposed to be. When she died, I thought it was gone forever. He turned to look at Ava, then back at the sleeping children. But then you and Grace came along, and suddenly I belonged again. Not to a place or a situation, but to people. To a family I chose and who chose me back. So when I saw that gun pointed at you at Grace, the choice was simple. I protect my family, whatever it takes. Ava pulled into their building's parking spot, turned off the engine, and sat in silence for a moment. We chose you too, she said finally. Before that elevator, before the gun, Grace and I chose you and Caleb. You're our family, Noah. Our real family. Getting Noah up the 3 flights of stairs was an adventure, with Mrs. Chen hovering anxiously and Mr. Liu insisting on carrying everything while scolding Noah for getting shot like an action movie fool. The apartment had been cleaned and stocked by their neighbors, a welcome home banner clearly made by Caleb strung across the living room. That night after the children were asleep, Noah sat on the couch where he'd first offered Ava shelter almost a year ago. So much had changed, yet the core remained the same. 4 people who shouldn't work as a family but did, held together by choice and commitment, and a love that didn't fit into neat categories. The doctor said you can't go back to construction for at least 3 months, like Ava said, joining him with 2 cups of tea. I talked to my supervisor. I can pick up extra shifts, and with the fundraising money, we'll figure it out, Noah said, accepting the tea gratefully. We always do. Together. Together. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of their home, Grace's soft snoring, Caleb mumbling in his sleep, Mrs. Chen's television from next door, the city humming beyond their windows. You know what Caleb said at the hospital? Ava asked. He said you promised to take care of your sisters. Noah smiled. Did I? Things are a little fuzzy. You called us your girls. All your girls. Well, you are. You and Grace, your family, real family. The kind you choose, the kind you'd take a bullet for. The kind you'd live for too, I hope. Noah reached over and squeezed her hand. Especially that. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance, another emergency, another crisis in the city that never slept. But inside apartment 3B there was peace, a father healing, a mother growing stronger, 2 children safe and loved, and the unshakable certainty that whatever came next, they would face it together. The bullet had been meant to destroy, but instead it had crystallized something precious, the absolute certainty that family isn't about blood or law or conventional definitions. It's about showing up, stepping up, and sometimes stepping in front of danger because the people behind you matter more than anything else. Noah closed his eyes, feeling the phantom pain in his chest where the bullet had torn through, and found himself grateful for it. Not for the pain or the near-death experience, but for the clarity it had brought. He'd spent 2 years merely surviving after Sarah's death. The shooting had reminded him what it meant to truly live, to have something, someone worth dying for, and more importantly, worth living for. The rehabilitation process consumed the rest of summer each day, a small battle against the limitations of Noah's damaged body. Physical therapy sessions in the apartment's living room became a family affair, with Grace toddling over to hand him resistance bands, and Caleb counting repetitions with the serious concentration of a professional trainer. Ava managed it all while working double shifts at the hospital cafeteria, coming home exhausted, but never complaining, her determination to keep them afloat matching Noah's determination to heal. 15 more, Daddy, Caleb announced one August morning, holding the timer app on Ava's phone. You can do it. Noah's left arm trembled as he lifted the lightweight, the movement pulling at scar tissue that still felt like fire beneath his skin. Sweat dripped down his face, but he completed the repetitions, unwilling to disappoint his son's faith in him. Good job, Grace said clearly, her vocabulary expanding daily now that she was approaching 18 months. She clapped her tiny hands, then toddled over to pat Noah's knee. Daddy's strong. The word stopped everyone. Grace had never called him that before. She'd barely been speaking when the shooting happened, and since then she'd called him No-No, her baby version of Noah. But now, with the simple certainty of a toddler who knew exactly who belonged to whom, she'd claimed him. Ava's eyes met Noah's across the room, both of them recognizing the moment for what it was, another invisible thread binding their patchwork family tighter together. That's right, Princess, Noah managed through the lump in his throat. Daddy's getting strong for you. The insurance settlement from the hospital's liability coverage had finally come through enough to cover Noah's medical bills and provide a cushion for the months he couldn't work. Gary had kept his position open at the construction company, but everyone knew Noah wouldn't be ready for that kind of physical labor for months yet, if ever. The damage to his lung and shoulder meant his days of heavy lifting might be permanently behind him. I've been thinking, Ava said that evening after the kids were asleep. She sat at the kitchen table with the notebook pages covered with calculations and plans. About the future. Noah eased himself into the chair across from her, still moving carefully. What kind of thinking? I want to go to nursing school. The words came out in a rush, as if she'd been holding them back for weeks. I've been taking online prerequisites when Grace naps, and my supervisor says the hospital has a program where they'll pay for school if you commit to working there after graduation. Ava, that's amazing. But it would mean 3 years of school crazy hours clinicals. I'd need help with Grace more than I already ask for. And I know you're still recovering and it's too much to ask. Yes, Noah interrupted. I haven't even explained the whole plan. Yes, he repeated. Whatever you need, yes. Ava's eyes filled with tears. You don't even know what you're agreeing to. I'm agreeing to supporting your dreams the way you've supported us through all of this. I'm agreeing to being your family, Ava. That's what we do. The plan was ambitious but doable. Ava would start with evening classes while maintaining her day shifts at the hospital. Noah, once he was cleared for light activity, would take on childcare duties and explore vocational rehabilitation programs that Patricia had found, maybe teaching construction skills at the technical college or consulting on building projects that didn't require physical labor. We're really doing this, Ava said wonderingly, building an actual future. Did you think we weren't? She was quiet for a moment. Part of me kept waiting for you to realize we were too much trouble, that taking us in was a mistake. Ava. Noah reached across the table, taking her hand. The only mistake would have been letting you leave. You and Grace, you saved us just as much as we saved you. Caleb and I were just existing before. Now we're living. September brought new challenges and unexpected revelations. Caleb started kindergarten at PS 172, proudly wearing his dinosaur backpack and carrying his medical alert bracelet that listed his conditions and emergency contacts. The first day, Noah and Ava both walked him to school, Grace in her stroller looking like any other family in the crowd of parents and children. You'll be good, right? Caleb asked Noah seriously at the classroom door.
You'll take your medicine and do your exercises. I promise, buddy. And you'll pick me up, both of you. We'll be here, Ava assured him, smoothing his hair. All of us.
Watching Caleb walk into that classroom so small but so brave, Noah felt a fierce pride mixed with terror. The world was big and dangerous. He had the scars to prove it, but you couldn't protect them from everything. You could only give them the tools to face it. That afternoon, while Grace napped, Noah received an unexpected phone call. It was Marcus Rodriguez's public defender asking if Noah would testify at Marcus's sentencing hearing. He's pled guilty to lesser charges, the lawyer explained, but the judge wants to hear from the victim before sentencing. Your testimony could make the difference between prison time and alternative sentencing. Noah didn't hesitate. When? Next Thursday. But Mr. Reed, I should warn you, the prosecution wants significant jail time. Your testimony might not be enough. I'll be there. Ava found him sitting on the couch afterwards, staring at nothing. What's wrong? Marcus Rodriguez's sentencing is next week. They want me to testify. You're going to help him. It wasn't a question. His daughter needs him. Isabella needs her father. He shot you, Noah. He could have killed you. He almost did kill you. But he didn't mean to, and even if he had... Noah paused, choosing his words carefully. I've been thinking about that day a lot. About how quickly everything can change, how one moment of desperation can destroy everything. He's not a bad man, Ava. He's a father who made a terrible decision in an impossible situation. You're too forgiving. Maybe. Or maybe I just understand that grace isn't something you deserve. It's something you're given. Someone gave us grace when we needed it. Mrs. Chen, Gary, Diane, Mr. Liu. They didn't have to help us, but they did. Now it's my turn to pass it on. The courthouse was imposing, all marble and mahogany, designed to intimidate. Noah wore his only suit, the one he'd bought for Sarah's funeral, now hanging loose on his frame after months of recovery. Ava had wanted to come, but someone needed to watch the kids, and Noah had insisted this was something he needed to do alone. Marcus Rodriguez looked smaller than Noah remembered, diminished by months of house arrest and the weight of what he'd done. His daughter wasn't there, she was in school where she belonged, but her presence was felt in every word of his lawyer's opening statement. When Noah was called to testify, the prosecution attorney approached him with barely concealed frustration. Mr. Reed, you were shot in the chest by the defendant, correct? Yes. You nearly died. Yes. You spent 6 weeks in the hospital and are still recovering from your injuries. That's correct. And yet you're here to speak on behalf of the man who shot you. Noah looked directly at Marcus, who had tears streaming down his face. I'm here to speak about a father who was watching his child die because he couldn't afford medication that should be a human right, not a luxury. I'm here to talk about a system that failed both of us, him and me, and about the grace we need to show each other when systems fail. The prosecutor looked disgusted. He brought a loaded weapon into a hospital full of children, Mr. Reed. And I would have done the same thing, Noah said quietly, causing a murmur through the courtroom. If my son was dying and I had no other options, I would have done whatever it took. Any parent would. Even commit armed robbery. I hope I would have found another way, but I can't say for certain that I would have. Desperation makes us do things we never thought we were capable of. Mr. Rodriguez made a terrible mistake, but it came from love, not malice. His daughter needs him. She's already lost her mother to cancer. Don't make her lose her father to a broken system. The judge, an elderly woman with sharp eyes, leaned forward. Mr. Reed, you're asking this court to show leniency to a man who could have killed you, who could have killed a teenage mother and her infant. I'm asking the court to recognize that justice without mercy isn't justice at all. Mr. Rodriguez needs help, not prison. His daughter needs her father, and maybe your honor. We need to ask ourselves why a parent in one of the richest countries in the world has to choose between breaking the law and watching their child die. Noah's testimony caused a stir in the media. The story of the victim advocating for his shooter went viral, reigniting debates about healthcare, desperation, and forgiveness. But Noah avoided the interviews and attention, focusing instead on his family and recovery. The day the verdict came down, 2 years probation, community service, and mandatory counseling instead of prison time, Marcus called Noah, personally. I don't know how to thank you, he said, voice thick with emotion. Take care of Isabella. Be the father she needs. That's thanks enough. The fundraiser people set up, there's enough for her insulin for 2 years now, and I got a job construction with Mr. Gary's crew. He says you recommended me. Noah smiled. Gary had mentioned needing another hand, and Noah had made a suggestion. Just show up and work hard. Gary's tough but fair. I will. I promise. And Mr. Reed, every day I'll try to be worthy of the second chance you gave me. October arrived with its crisp mornings and earlier sunsets, and with it came a milestone, Noah's final surgical follow-up. Dr. Alvarez examined the scars, reviewed the x-rays, and ran Noah through a series of physical tests. Remarkable recovery, he pronounced. You'll have limitations, heavy lifting is probably out permanently, and you'll likely feel weather changes in that shoulder for the rest of your life. But considering where you were 6 months ago, I'm alive, Noah finished. That's what matters. More than alive. You're thriving. That family of yours is good medicine. The best. Alvarez hesitated, then said, There's something else. The hospital board has been discussing your case. The publicity, your advocacy for Mr. Rodriguez, the way you've handled everything, they want to offer you something. I don't want money, Seth. Not money. A job. Community liaison for the hospital's new financial assistance program, helping families navigate the system when they can't afford care. It's part-time, initially flexible hours, and it comes with full benefits for you and your dependents. Noah stared at him. I don't have a degree. I barely finished high school. You have something better lived experience. You understand what these families are going through because you've been there. The board thinks you could make a real difference. Can I think about it? Of course. But Noah, don't think too long. This kind of opportunity doesn't come around often. That evening, Noah presented the offer to his family over dinner, Ava's homemade lasagna, a recipe she'd perfected over months of practice. You should take it, Ava said immediately. It's perfect for you. But construction nearly killed you even before you got shot, she pointed out. This would be helping people using your experience to make things better for families like ours. Like Mr. Marcus, Caleb added, understanding more than a 5-year-old should. So kids don't lose their daddies. Even Grace seemed to have an opinion, banging her spoon on her high chair and shouting, Yes, yes, yes. Looks like it's unanimous. Noah laughed. We haven't voted yet, Mrs. Chen said from her spot at the table she'd taken to joining them for dinner most nights now. But my vote is yes. You have good heart. Should use it. The transition wasn't easy. Noah had to learn medical terminology, insurance protocols, assistance program requirements. But every family he helped, every parent who cried with relief, when he found a way to get their child's medication covered, every tragedy, averted it all. Confirmed he'd made the right choice. Ava started her nursing prerequisites, studying late into the night while Noah quizzed her on anatomy and physiology. They developed a routine, Noah handling bedtime while Ava studied, then Ava taking early mornings so Noah could prepare for his day at the hospital. It was exhausting, but purposeful. Each sacrifice an investment in their shared future. One November evening, as the first real cold snap hit the city, Noah was putting Caleb to bed when his son asked a question that stopped him cold. Daddy, are you going to marry Ava? Noah nearly dropped the insulin pen he was preparing. What makes you ask that, buddy? Tommy at school says if grown-ups live together and have kids, they should be married. And Grace is kind of like my sister and Ava's kind of like my mom, so shouldn't you be married? Noah sat on the edge of Caleb's bed, choosing his words carefully. Families come in all different shapes, Cal. Some have married parents, some don't. What matters is that we love each other and take care of each other. But do you love Ava? The question hung in the air, simple and devastating. Because the truth was, Noah did love Ava. He'd probably loved her for months maybe since that night she'd fought for Grace in the hospital. But love was complicated when you were two damaged people trying to raise 2 children while rebuilding your lives. I love our family, Noah said finally. All of it. Caleb seemed satisfied with that answer, but the question lingered in Noah's mind long after his son fell asleep. He found Ava in the kitchen highlighting passages in her medical terminology textbook. She looked up when he entered, and something in his expression must have shown because she immediately asked, What's wrong? Caleb asked if we're going to get married. Ava's highlighter stopped moving. Oh, yeah. They stood there in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken things filling the space between them. Noah, Ava started, then stopped. We can't. It would change everything. I know. The kids depend on us being stable. If we tried and it didn't work. I know. And I'm 19, you're 33. People would. I know, Ava. She set down her highlighter, really looking at him for the first time. But Caleb's question made me realize something. We're already a family. We're already partners. We're already raising these kids together. We're already everything except. Noah moved closer, still careful, still respectful of boundaries they'd maintained for over a year. Except honest about what this is, what we are to each other. What are we, Noah? I don't know, but I know that when I got shot, my only thought was that I needed to survive for my family, for Caleb, for Grace, and for you. I know that watching you become the incredible mother and woman you are has been one of the greatest privileges of my life. I know that I can't imagine a future that doesn't have you in it. Ava's eyes filled with tears. I'm scared. Of what? Of ruining this. Of losing you as a friend, as family. Of Grace losing the only father she's ever known. Of breaking something that's already so good. Noah reached out gently, taking her hand. What if we could make it better? Is that possible? I don't know. But maybe we owe it to ourselves to find out. Ava looked at their joined hands, then back at his face, the face she'd watched contort in pain during physical therapy light up, when Grace took her first steps soften with pride when Caleb mastered a new skill. The face of the man who'd taken a bullet rather than let harm come to her and her daughter. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Let's find out, slowly, carefully, with the kids' well-being always coming first. Always. Their first actual date was almost comically awkward. Mrs. Chen babysat while they went to a local diner, both of them dressed up but uncertain how to act outside their established roles. They'd shared life and death moments, raised children together, but somehow sitting across from each other in a booth talking about movies and music felt impossibly intimate. This is weird. Ava finally laughed over her milkshake. So weird, Noah agreed, relaxing. We're doing this backward, aren't we? Most people date, then move in together, then raise kids. When have we ever done things the normal way? Good point. They found their rhythm, eventually stealing moments between responsibilities, a walk in the park, while the kids played coffee after dropping them at school conversations that went deeper than the daily logistics of family life. They discovered things about each other that had been buried under survival mode. Noah's love of old jazz, Ava's secret poetry writing shared dreams and separate ones. Christmas approached with its familiar financial stress, but this year felt different. The community that had formed around them rallied again. Gary's crew chipped in for presents, Mrs. Chen cooked enough food for an army, the hospital staff organized a toy drive that seemed suspiciously targeted at their specific children. On Christmas Eve, after the kids were asleep, Grace in her toddler bed, Caleb surrounded by dinosaur stuffies. Noah and Ava sat by their small tree, a Charlie Brown special, they decorated with homemade ornaments. I have something for you, Noah said, pulling out a small wrapped box. Noah, we agreed no presents. The kids, just open it. Inside was a simple silver necklace with 2 charms, a tiny G and a tiny C. For your kids, Noah explained. Both of them. Ava touched the charms gently. Both of them. She repeated, understanding what he meant. Caleb had become as much hers as Grace had become his. I have something for you too, she said, producing an envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, official-looking with a government seal. Noah read it twice before the words sank in. This is adoption paperwork for Caleb. If something happened to you, God forbid, I want to be able to take care of him. Legally. Officially. He's my son too, Noah. In every way that matters. Noah set the paper aside and pulled Ava into his arms, their first real embrace that wasn't about comfort or crisis, but about choice and love and future. I love you, he whispered into her hair. I should have said it months ago. I love you too, she whispered back. I think I have since you stood between that gun and my daughter. They stayed like that for a long moment, holding each other and the weight of their shared future until Grace's cry interrupted. Not distress, just the sleepy complaint of a toddler who'd lost her pacifier. I'll get her, they both said. At the same time, then laughed. Together, Noah suggested. Together. New Year's Eve found them at the hospital's family event. Noah now officially employed there. Ava registered for spring classes. Dr. Alvarez made a speech about community and resilience, mentioning, without naming them, the family that had shown everyone what courage looked like. Next year's going to be different, Ava said as midnight approached Grace, sleeping in her arms while Caleb fought to stay awake for the countdown. Different how? Better. Harder maybe with school and everything, but better. We're building something real, Noah. Something lasting. The countdown began and Caleb perked up, joining in enthusiastically. 10, 9, 8. Noah looked at his family, his son, the teenage girl who'd become his partner. In every sense, the baby who called him daddy, the elderly woman who'd claimed them all as grandchildren, the friends who'd become family and felt something he hadn't experienced since Sarah died, complete. 3, 2, 1, Happy New Year. Caleb blew his noisemaker enthusiastically, while Grace startled awake and immediately started crying. Ava and Noah laughed, trying to soothe her while preventing Caleb from waking every baby in the building with his enthusiasm. It was chaos. It was imperfect. It was theirs. Later, after they'd gotten home and put the kids to bed, Noah found himself standing in Grace's doorway, watching her sleep. Ava joined him, slipping her hand into his. What are you thinking about? That day in the elevator, he admitted. When I thought I was dying, I told you to take care of your sisters. I meant you and Grace, but also... He paused, struggling for words. I think Sarah would have seen you as a sister, someone to protect, to guide, to love. Not romantically, not at first, but as family. And maybe that's what had to happen first. We had to become family before we could become anything else. You think she would approve of us? Noah pulled Ava closer. I think she would be proud of how we've taken care of each other, of how we've raised these kids, of how we've built something beautiful from broken pieces. Tell me about her, Ava said. I want to know her better. So Noah did, standing there in the doorway of their daughter's room, because Grace was theirs now, just as Caleb was theirs, talking about the woman whose death had nearly destroyed him, and whose memory now blessed the family that had risen from those ashes. She would have loved you, he finished. Your strength, your determination, your fierce love for Grace. She would have been honored to call you sister. I would have been honored to know her. They stood in comfortable silence, watching Grace sleep until Caleb called out from his room. Daddy. Ava, I can't sleep. They found him sitting up in bed, looking worried. What's wrong, buddy? Noah asked, sitting on one side of the bed while Ava sat on the other. If you and Ava get married, does that mean things will change? Noah and Ava exchanged glances over his head. Some things would change, Ava said carefully. But the important things, how much we love you, how we take care of each other, our family, those things would never change. Would you be my real mom then? Ava's breath caught. Do you want me to be... Caleb considered this seriously. I think you already are. You take care of me when I'm sick, you make my lunch, you read me stories. That's what moms do, right? Yeah, baby, Ava whispered, tears streaming down her face. That's what moms do. Then you're my mom. Is that okay? It's more than okay. It's perfect. Noah reached over and pulled both of them into a hug, his son and the woman who'd become his mother, feeling Sarah's presence like a warm blessing around them all. Family hug, Caleb shouted, and as if summoned, they heard Grace calling from her room. Hug, hug. They collected Grace and resumed the hug, 4 people who'd found each other through tragedy and choice, through bullets and bravery, through the simple daily act of showing up for each other. I love you all, Noah said, his voice thick with emotion. Love you too, Daddy, Caleb said. Love, love, Grace contributed. Forever, Ava added, meeting Noah's eyes over the children's heads.
no matter what comes next.
And in that moment, in their modest apartment in Sunset Park with bills to pay and challenges ahead with scars both visible and hidden, they were complete. They were family. They were home. The adoption hearing was set for a Tuesday in March, the kind of bright cold morning that made the courthouse steps gleam like marble promises. Noah adjusted Caleb's tie for the third time, while Ava wrestled Grace into her best dress, the one Mrs. Chen had bought specifically for this occasion. They looked like what they were, a family heading to make official what the heart had already decided. "Do I have to talk to the judge?" Caleb asked nervously, his 6-year-old hands fidgeting with the dinosaur pin Ava had let him wear on his suit jacket. "Only if you want to," Noah assured him. "But the judge might ask you some questions about Ava being your mom." "She is my mom," Caleb said with that simple certainty that still made Ava tear up every time. "I want to tell everyone." The courtroom was smaller than Noah expected, more intimate, filled with other families in various stages of legal becoming. Patricia was there as their social worker advocate, her report thick with documentation of their journey. Mrs. Chen sat in the front row in her best dress, clutching her purse like she might need to hit someone with it if they tried to stop this adoption. "The matter of the adoption petition for Caleb Reed," the clerk announced, and they all stood. Judge Catherine Morrison, the same woman who had presided over Marcus Rodriguez's sentencing, looked at them with recognition and something that might have been approval. "Mr. Reed, Ms. Monroe, I've reviewed the petition and the social worker's report. This is somewhat unusual, Ms. Monroe. You're only 19 and you're seeking to adopt a child who isn't biologically related to you while maintaining a household with his biological father." "Yes, Your Honor," Ava said, her voice steady, despite Noah feeling her hand tremble in his. "But Caleb is my son in every way that matters. I've been raising him for over a year. I know his medical needs, his fears, his dreams. When he has nightmares, he calls for me. When he's proud of something at school, I'm who he wants to tell. Biology doesn't make a parent, love does. And Mr. Reed, you're comfortable with this arrangement. Sharing legal custody with Miss Monroe." "Your Honor," Noah said, "Ava saved my son's life just by being in it. After my wife died, Caleb and I were just going through the motions. Ava brought us back to life. She's already his mother. This is just paperwork catching up to reality." The judge turned to Caleb. "Young man, do you understand what's happening today?" Caleb stood up straighter. "Yes, ma'am. Ava's going to be my real mom on paper, not just in my heart." "And how do you feel about that?" "Happy. Really, really happy. And Grace will really be my sister, not just kind of my sister." Grace, as if understanding she'd been mentioned, chose that moment to shout, "Cal, Cal," and try to escape Ava's arms to get to her brother. Judge Morrison's stern expression cracked slightly. "I see the feelings are mutual." She reviewed the papers again, then looked at Patricia. "Ms. Washington, your report is quite comprehensive. You've been working with this family for how long?" "Since the beginning, Your Honor. Since the night Ms. Monroe and her daughter came to live with Mr. Reed. I've watched them grow from strangers helping each other survive into a genuine family unit. The children are thriving. Both Mr. Reed and Ms. Monroe have stable employment. They've created a loving, supportive home despite significant challenges, including Mr. Reed being shot protecting Miss Monroe and her daughter. Yes, Your Honor, an incident that only strengthened their bonds." The judge was quiet for a moment, studying them. "Miss Monroe, you're also in nursing school, I see." "Yes, Your Honor. I start the clinical portion next month. Mr. Reed watches the children while I'm in class, and I cover his work hours. We make it work." "And you're not married?" "No, Your Honor," Noah said. "Not yet." The "yet" hung in the air, full of promise and intention. Judge Morrison smiled in the first real warmth she'd shown. "In my 20 years on the bench, I've seen many families. Traditional ones, unconventional ones, broken ones trying to heal. What I see here is love, commitment, and stability. The court approves the adoption petition. Congratulations, Ms. Monroe. You are officially Caleb Reed's mother." The courtroom erupted in their small section, Mrs. Chen crying openly, Patricia hugging them both, Caleb launching himself into Ava's arms, while Grace squealed with delight at the commotion. Noah stood back for a moment, watching his son cling to his new official mother, feeling Sarah's presence like sunlight through the high windows.
We did it, Ava whispered to him over Caleb's head. We're really a family. We always were, Noah replied. Now we just have the paper to prove it.
The celebration lunch at their favorite pizza place was loud and chaotic and perfect. Caleb wore his "I was adopted today" sticker, proudly telling anyone who would listen that he had two moms now, one in heaven and one right here. Grace, not to be outdone, kept pointing at everyone and declaring, "Mine, she's got the right idea." Mrs. Chen said her third slice of pizza, defying every expectation about elderly appetites. "You're all hers, she's all yours. Family." That evening, after the excitement had died down and the kids were asleep, Noah found Ava on the fire escape, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders against the March chill. The city spread out below them, lights twinkling like earthbound constellations. "You okay?" he asked, settling beside her. "I keep thinking about my parents," she admitted. "What they would say if they knew their teenage daughter had just adopted a 6-year-old diabetic boy while raising a toddler and living with a man who isn't her husband. What do you think they'd say? That I've ruined my life, thrown away every opportunity." She paused, then smiled. "They'd be completely wrong. Tell me about that life they wanted for you." Ava pulled the blanket tighter. Yale undergrad, then law school. Marriage to someone from the right family at 28, first child at 31, planned and perfect. A brownstone in the right neighborhood, private schools, summers in the Hamptons. Everything scheduled, controlled, acceptable. And instead, I'm 19 with 2 kids living in a 3-bedroom in Sunset Park with a man who got shot, saving my life, studying to be a nurse on scholarships and hope. I buy groceries with coupons, my daughter wears hand-me-downs, and my son. God, it feels good to say that my son needs insulin we sometimes struggle to afford. Regrets. Ava turned to look at him fully. None. Not one. That life they planned for me, it was never mine. It was theirs projected onto me. This life. The one where Grace calls you daddy, and Caleb calls me mom. Where Mrs. Chen teaches me to make dumplings, and your construction crew shows up to move furniture. Where we're tired all the time, but never alone. This is the life I choose. Every day I choose this. Noah kissed her then, soft and certain, tasting promise and determination and the faint hint of pizza sauce. "I love you," he said against her lips. "I love our life. I love our family. Even the hard parts. Especially the hard parts. They're what make the good parts so good." Spring rushed into summer with a speed that left them all breathless. Ava's clinical rotations were brutal 12-hour shifts at the hospital, followed by studying, followed by managing the household. Noah had been promoted at his job now, supervising the financial assistance program he'd once just assisted with. The extra income helped, but the additional responsibilities meant longer hours, more families in crisis to navigate through the system. They tag-teamed everything with military precision. Noah handled morning routines, checking Caleb's blood sugar, getting both kids dressed and fed, school drop-off. Ava managed afternoons when she wasn't at clinical's homework, helped dinner prep the endless cycle of laundry that 2 active children generated. Evenings were sacred family time, no matter how exhausted they were. "We're like a really tired superhero team," Ava said one evening, collapsing on the couch after getting both kids down. "The exhausted Avengers." Noah agreed, pulling her feet into his lap to massage them, a ritual that had developed after her first week of clinical rotations. "My instructor said I have natural instincts," Ava mentioned, "especially with pediatric patients." "Of course you do. You've been taking care of sick kids since you were 17. She wants to recommend me for the pediatric specialty track. It's more competitive, but you're going to do it," Noah finished, "because you're Ava Monroe and you don't do anything halfway." She smiled at him, that soft smile that still made his chest tight even after all this time. "Ava Reed, actually." Noah's hand stilled on her feet. "What?" "I've been thinking about it. When we get married and don't look at me like that, we both know it's when not if I want us all to have the same name. The kids are both Reeds. I want to be one too." Ava Monroe is the girl who fought her parents for Grace, who survived being abandoned, who built this life from nothing. And Ava Reed is the woman who chose her family and was chosen in return. I like her better. The proposal when it came was nothing like Noah had planned. He'd saved for months for a ring, had elaborate ideas about the perfect moment. But life, as always, had other plans. It was a Thursday evening in August, the kind of brutal New York summer day where the air felt solid with heat and humidity. The air conditioning had broken that morning, and their apartment was barely bearable even with every fan running. Both kids were cranky Caleb from a blood sugar spike that wouldn't come down Grace from molars coming in. Ava had just gotten home from a particularly difficult clinical shift where she'd helped with a pediatric code blue that hadn't ended well. She was still in her scrubs, exhausted and emotionally drained, trying to soothe Grace, while Noah fought with Caleb's insulin pump that had chosen this moment to malfunction. "I can't get it to calibrate," Noah said, frustration evident. "We might need to go to the ER." "The ER is slammed," Ava said, bouncing a screaming Grace. 3-hour wait minimum. Let me see." She handed Grace to Noah and knelt beside Caleb, her tired hands somehow steady as she worked through the pump's error messages. Within minutes, she had it working again, the correct dose delivering. "How did you watched you do it 100 times. Learned the troubleshooting from the manual you keep in the kitchen drawer." She checked Caleb's levels again. "He's good. Coming down already." Noah looked at her, exhausted, sweating in the broken air conditioning, still wearing scrubs stained with God knows what, comforting his son with the same hands that had just saved the pump, and knew with absolute certainty that this was the moment. "Marry me," he said. Ava looked up, startled. "What?" "Marry me," he repeated, shifting Grace to one arm so he could pull the ring box from his pocket where it had been living for 2 weeks waiting for the perfect moment. Not someday, not when things are perfect, not when we have time to plan something elaborate. Soon. As soon as we can. Because this is us, Ava. Chaos and broken air conditioning and medical emergencies and choosing each other anyway. Every day choosing each other. "Noah, you just saved our son from an ER visit after working 13 hours and losing a patient. You did it without hesitation, without complaint, because that's who you are. You show up. You stay. You love us even when we're difficult and exhausting and expensive." He opened the box one-handed, revealing a simple silver band with a small diamond, nothing fancy, nothing like what her parents would have expected for their daughter, but real and honest, and theirs. "So marry me, Ava Monroe. Become Ava Reed officially. Make this beautiful, chaotic, imperfect family official in every way it can be." "Mommy's crying," Caleb observed, and she was tears streaming down her face. "Happy tears," she managed. "Yes. Of course, yes. 1,000 times yes." Noah slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, then pulled her into a kiss that was interrupted almost immediately by Grace deciding she wanted in on whatever was happening, patting both their faces with sticky hands. "Are you married now?" Caleb asked hopefully. "Not yet, buddy." Noah laughed. "But soon. Tomorrow. Not quite that soon, but soon." They were married 6 weeks later on a Tuesday afternoon at the courthouse with Patricia and Mrs. Chen as witnesses, Gary and the construction crew filling the small room, Diane and the hospital staff she'd dragged along spilling into the hallway. It wasn't the wedding either of them had imagined in younger days, but it was perfect for who they'd become. Ava wore a simple white sundress she'd found at a thrift store altered by Mrs. Chen to fit perfectly. Noah wore his good suit, the one he'd bought for his hospital job. Caleb carried the rings with such serious concentration that everyone held their breath, and Grace toddled down the aisle, throwing flower petals, with aggressive enthusiasm, occasionally eating one. "Do you, Noah Reed, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Judge Morrison asked, having insisted on performing the ceremony herself. "I do," Noah said, his voice strong and certain. "I did the moment she stood up to her parents for Grace. I did when she chose us over everything else. I did when she became Caleb's mother. I do now, and I will tomorrow, and every tomorrow after that." "That was supposed to be just 'I do,'" the judge said with a smile. "But I'll allow it. Ms. Monroe." "I do," Ava said through tears. "I did when you offered a scared teenage mother your couch. I did when you taught me to change a diaper at 2 a.m. I did when you stepped in front of a gun for us. I do now and always. Then by the power vested in me by the state of New York, I pronounce you husband and wife." They kissed to thunderous applause, and Grace shouting, "Yay!" and Caleb announcing to everyone, "That's my mom and dad." The reception was in Sunset Park itself, a potluck affair with dishes from a dozen different cultures, music from someone's Bluetooth speaker, and children running everywhere. Marcus Rodriguez was there with Isabella, both of them shy but grateful to be included. The hospital staff had pooled resources for a cake that said, "Finally," in frosting. Mrs. Chen cried through 3 tissues and insisted on making a speech in Mandarin that no one understood but everyone felt. As the sun set over Brooklyn, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Noah and Ava stood watching their children play, Caleb pushing Grace on a swing while she shrieked with delight. "No regrets?" Noah asked, pulling his wife closer. "None," Ava said firmly. "This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. Even though it's not the life you planned, especially because it's not the life I planned. That life would have been safe, predictable, empty. This life, it's terrifying and exhausting and wonderful. It's real." The years that followed were exactly that, terrifying and exhausting and wonderful. Ava graduated from nursing school with honors, immediately starting in the pediatric ward at Mercy General. Her supervisor's evaluation read, "Unusual maturity and instincts for such a young nurse. Connects with patients and families on a deep level. Future leadership potential." Noah's work evolved too, the hospital expanding his role to include counseling families through medical crisis, not just financial assistance. He became known as the man who understood who'd been there, who could sit with a parent facing impossible choices and say, "I know, let me help." Caleb thrived, his diabetes managed, but never defining him. He grew tall and thoughtful, protective of Grace in a way that went beyond typical sibling dynamics. He wanted to be a doctor. He announced at age 8 specifically an endocrinologist. "So kids like me don't have to be scared," he explained. Grace grew into a force of nature, confident and caring with Ava's determination and Noah's protectiveness. She appointed herself guardian of every underdog at school, coming home with stories of standing up to bullies and sharing her lunch with kids who'd forgotten theirs. "She's going to change the world," Ava said one evening, watching Grace organize a neighborhood fundraiser for a family whose apartment had burned. "She already has," Noah replied. "She changed ours." They had their struggles. Money was always tight despite both incomes. Caleb had a severe hypoglycemic episode that landed him in the ICU for 3 days. Ava's parents made one attempt at reconciliation that ended with lawyers and restraining orders. But they faced each challenge together, their bond strengthened by every storm weathered, when Grace was 7 and Caleb 11. Ava found out she was pregnant. They hadn't planned it, could barely afford the 2 kids they had, but the joy on Noah's face when she told him made every worry worth it. "Another one," Mrs. Chen said when they told her. Though her criticism was undermined by immediate plans for baby clothes and name suggestions. "We're collectors," Noah joked. "We collect family members." Samuel Chen Reed was born on a snowy December morning, named for the grandfather Noah had never met, and the woman who'd become grandmother to them all. He had Noah's eyes and Ava's stubborn chin, and his siblings were instantly obsessed. "He's so small," Grace whispered, touching his tiny fingers with reverent care. "We'll protect him," Caleb said solemnly. "We're his big brother and sister. That's our job." The night they brought Sam home, they found their apartment decorated with a banner, "Welcome Home." Baby Sam. Neighbors had stocked their freezer with meals, left diapers and supplies, turned their homecoming into a community celebration. "Remember when it was just you and Caleb?" Ava asked Noah as they settled Sam in the bassinet that had once been Grace's. "Barely," Noah admitted. "That feels like a different lifetime." "Do you miss it?" "The simplicity." "I miss the sleep." Noah laughed. "But no, that wasn't simple. It was empty. This is full. Complicated and chaotic and full." When Sam was 2, they finally saved enough for a down payment on a house, nothing fancy, a fixer-upper in a decent school district, but theirs. The whole neighborhood turned out to help them move, a parade of pickup trucks and strong backs and casserole dishes. "Look at this," Ava said their first night in the new house, standing in what would be their kitchen once they fixed the cabinets. "We have a house, an actual house." "With 4 bedrooms, Noah added. "Everyone gets their own room. Except us."
Ava pointed out. Except us, he agreed, pulling her close. We're stuck with each other. Forever. Forever. Grace became a social worker exactly as everyone expected, specializing in family preservation. She worked with teenage parents, helping them navigate the same systems her mother had faced. Her office wall held a photo from her college graduation. Noah and Ava beaming with pride. Caleb in his medical school scrubs, Sam on Noah's shoulders. Mrs. Chen, 93, and still hitting people with her cane when necessary in her finest dress. You know what I tell them, Grace said during one family dinner talking about her teenage clients. I tell them about us. About Mom having me at 17, about Dad choosing us, about how family isn't about being perfect, it's about showing up. Caleb did become a doctor pediatric endocrinologist as promised.
His residency was at Mercy General, where everyone still remembered the night his father was shot, where his mother had learned to be a nurse, where their family's story had really begun. Full circle. Dr. Alvarez, now nearing retirement, said when Caleb started, Your father saved a life by nearly losing his. Your mother fought for you when everyone said she couldn't do it, and now here you are ready to save other kids. Sam surprised everyone by becoming a teacher elementary school specializing in kids with learning differences and medical needs. Someone has to understand the kids who don't fit in the box, he explained. But the moment that brought everything truly full circle came on a March afternoon 25 years after that night in the elevator. Noah, now 58, with silver threading through his hair and laugh lines deeply etched, was training a new community liaison at the hospital when a young woman walked in with a baby looking lost and scared. She couldn't have been more than 17 holding an infant who couldn't have been more than a few weeks old. Her expensive clothes were wrinkled, her eyes red from crying. Can you help me? She asked. My parents kicked me out. I kept my baby and they kicked me out, and I don't know what to do. Noah looked at her, really looked at her, and saw Ava 25 years ago, fierce and frightened and determined. Yes, he said simply. I can help. Let's start with getting you both checked out medically, make sure you're okay. Then we'll talk about resources, places to stay, support systems. Why would you help me? You don't even know me. Noah smiled, thinking of that night so long ago when he'd made a choice that changed everything. Because someone should. Because family isn't always about blood, sometimes it's about choosing to show up for each other. And because every parent trying to do right by their child deserves help. He called Ava, now the head of pediatric nursing, to come evaluate the baby. When she walked in, still beautiful in her 50s, still wearing her hair the same way, still making his heart skip. When she smiled, she took one look at the scene and understood immediately. Hi, sweetheart, she said to the girl. I'm Ava. This is my husband, Noah. We're going to take care of you, okay? You and your baby both. Later, after they'd connected the girl with emergency housing and resources, after they'd made sure she had formula and diapers and a plan, Noah and Ava stood in the hospital lobby where their lives had first intersected. Think we should offer her our couch? Ava asked, half joking. Grace would kill us. Noah laughed. She's very protective of her childhood home. We did good, didn't we, with them? We did amazing. They walked out together into the March afternoon, the same kind of bright cold day when Caleb's adoption had been finalized, when their family had become official in the eyes of the law, though it had been real in their hearts long before. Want to know a secret? Ava asked as they reached their car, a minivan now practical and paid off. Always. Mrs. Chen left us something in her will. Mrs. Chen had passed 2 years earlier, 96, and fierce to the end, surrounded by the family she'd claimed through sheer force of will. What kind of something? Money. A lot of money. Apparently she'd been saving and investing for 50 years. She left it in trust for the kids' education and whatever the family needs. Noah stopped walking. How much money? Enough that Sam won't have student loans, enough that we can help Grace with a house down payment, enough that Caleb can do his fellowship without worry. She never said anything. The letter says family takes care of family, even after. Noah felt tears prick his eyes, thinking of the elderly woman who'd forced her way into their lives with soup and stern advice, who'd become the grandmother his children needed, who'd shown them that family was about choice and commitment, not just blood. That evening they had their regular Sunday dinner, a tradition that had survived 25 years.
Grace was there with her partner Caleb, with his fiancée Sam, with his new girlfriend who was trying not to be overwhelmed by the chaos. The table that had once barely held 4 now stretched to accommodate 10-12 when Gary and his wife joined them, 15 when various adopted family members appeared. "Tell the story," Sam requested as he did every year around the anniversary. "Tell the whole story." So Noah began as he always did with a November night in an emergency room, a desperate father with a diabetic son, and a teenage mother fighting for her baby.
Ava picked up the thread telling about the stranger who offered his couch, the way loneliness recognized loneliness, the choice to build something together from broken pieces. Grace added her parts, the memories she actually had, and the ones she'd been told so often they felt real. Caleb talked about gaining a mother, about learning that families could be chosen and created, not just born into. And then Daddy got shot, Grace said, as she always did at this part, protecting me and Mom. Which was stupid. Ava added their familiar script, but brave. And in the hospital, Noah continued, I told Dr. Alvarez something that became our family motto. Sometimes families aren't born. They all said together, even Sam's girlfriend, who'd heard this enough times to know the words, they're chosen. And we chose each other, Caleb finished. All of us. Even Mrs. Chen, Grace added, raising her glass of wine. Especially Mrs. Chen. They toasted to the woman who'd shown them that family extended beyond bloodlines, beyond conventional definitions, beyond what anyone else thought was proper or possible. Later, after everyone had gone home, except for the core 4 who'd started it all, they sat looking through photo albums, a luxury they couldn't have afforded in those early days, but now treasured. Look how young you were, Grace said to Ava, pointing at a picture from that first Christmas. 19 with 2 kids. Look how tired we were, Noah corrected, noting the exhaustion evident even in their smiles. But happy, Caleb observed. Even exhausted, we look happy. Because we were together, Sam said, simply too young to remember those early days, but raised on the story of them. That's what mattered. Noah looked around the living room of their house walls, covered with degrees and certificates, photos of grandchildren beginning to appear, evidence of lives well lived everywhere, and marveled at what they'd built from such desperate beginnings. You know what I realized, he said. That night in the elevator, when I thought I was dying, I whispered to Caleb to take care of his sisters. I meant you and Grace, he said to Ava. But really, I was asking a 5-year-old to take care of the family, all of us taking care of each other. And we did, Grace said. We all took care of each other. Still do, Caleb added. Always will, Sam confirmed. Ava leaned into Noah's side, fitting perfectly after all these years. That's what chosen families do. They choose each other over and over every day. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. As the evening grew late and they prepared for bed in the house, they'd made a home. Noah stood in the hallway lined with family photos. There was one from each major milestone: Caleb's adoption, their courthouse wedding, Sam's birth, Grace's high school graduation, Caleb's white coat ceremony, every Christmas, every birthday, every moment that mattered. But his favorite was one Diane had taken without them knowing a few weeks after he'd been shot. They were all in the hospital room, him propped up in bed, Ava beside him with Grace on her lap. Caleb curled against his other side. They weren't looking at the camera, but at each other, and the love between them was so visible it seemed to glow. That was the photo he'd had copied for each of the kids, the one that sat on desks and mantels across the city now, the one that proved that families weren't just born, they were built. Choice by choice, day by day, through bullets and birthdays, through hard times and holidays, through the simple act of showing up for each other. Coming to bed, Ava called. Yeah, Noah said, taking one last look at their history on the walls. Just remembering. Good memories. The best, he said, joining his wife of 24 years, even the hard ones. Especially the hard ones, she agreed, echoing their old refrain. They're what made us who we are. Who they were, the Reed family, not perfect, not conventional, but real, chosen and choosing over and over again forever. And in the morning, they would wake up and choose each other again as they had every morning for 25 years, as they would every morning for all the years to come. Because that's what love was, not a feeling or a moment or a grand gesture, but a choice renewed daily to show up for the people who had become your heart. The bullet had tried to end their story, but instead it had become just another chapter in a tale that would continue long after they were gone, carried in the hearts of 3 children who knew bone deep and unshakable that they were loved, that they were chosen, that they belonged. And really, what more could anyone ask for than that?